Chapter 1045. While Wuxia was rushing back to Pangu World, great changes had taken place in Pangu World. The core experts of Tao League took action at the same time and wiped out all the fiend celestials in the 33 heavens in just 3 to 5 days. Almost all the core experts of the 33 heavens, such as the sect leaders of the 33 heavens, had a supreme treasure of primordial with them, and their true disciples each had a spiritual treasure of chaos. As for the other high-ranking disciples, almost all of them had a primordial immortal weapon or an innate spirit weapon to kill their enemies. The Tao sect had forcefully used their magnificent equipment to completely defeat those foreign fiend celestials who were so poor that they did not even have a pair of pants. Then, with a set of extremely powerful supreme treasure of primordial, the 12 heavenly cauldron divine beads as the core, Tao League set up a heavenly cauldron formation in the 33 heavens, making it impregnable. After that, the sect masters of the Tao sect personally took action and led a group of elite disciples to sweep through the starry sky. They took back a small portion of the outer starry sky and rescued a group of Tao sect immortals who were trapped in the outer starry sky. At the same time, the Buddhist League also used up all their resources. The secluded relic venerables, ancient Buddhas, holy spirits, and venerable kings were all mobilized. Their numbers were no less than Tao Leagues. All kinds of supreme treasures of primordial and chaos treasures were also produced, making the fiend celestials of the outer domains wail and flee. The Gradrakuta mountain was easily conquered. In Yuan Ling's era, millions of chaos fiend celestials were born with 1 or 2 or 3 treasures. The weaker ones were innate spirit weapons, while the better ones were chaos treasures or even supreme treasures of primordial. Later, the chaos fiend celestials fell one after another. When Pangu World was created, only the Wahuang clan, the 7 Buddhas, the 9 Taoists and the 18 saints were left. Most of the fallen chaos fiend celestials' natal artifacts were destroyed in the battles, but a small number were collected by the almighty experts who had survived to this day. In particular, the 7 Buddhas and the 9 Taoists, who had plotted the fall of many fiend celestials, and even joined forces to kill them, were extremely wealthy. For example, Wuxia was still working hard to collect the power of merit to refine the weapons of merit to arm his disciples, while the 7 Buddhas and 9 Tao patriarchs could arm their disciples with all kinds of extremely powerful magic treasures. This was the difference in their foundation. Therefore, once the Buddhists and Taoists attacked with full force, the fiend celestials of the other realms who relied on their bodies and innate divine powers to fight were in for a bloody loss. Although they had caused great damage to the Buddhist sects and Taoist sects, it was not enough to threaten their peak powers. The Tao League did not make any moves after subduing the 33 heavens. But after the Buddhist League subdued the Great Vulture Mountain, they immediately sent 9 revered ones, 36 ancient Buddhas, 36 Buddhas, and a large number of kings, bodhisattvas, heavenly kings, almighties, and arhats to Pangu continent, sealing off Mianhu city. The so-called World Exalted One was the existence with the highest status and the strongest cultivation base in the Buddhist sect other than the Gautama Buddha. All of them were Gautama Buddha's direct disciples. They had obtained the true teachings from Gautama Buddha and then imparted them to other direct disciples. Basically, they had the status of Dharma imparting elders in Buddhism. The so-called World Exalted Ones were those who had the mighty power to control a world and create a boundless universe. They were revered by all living beings in the world, and that was why they were called World Exalted Ones. Many worlds had been created in the Great Vulture Mountain, and these World Exalted Ones were the masters of those tranquil lands of Buddhism. They had a lofty status in the Buddhist League, and their cultivation bases had reached the high-end realm of Tao breaking. The 9 World Exalted Ones came to the outskirts of Mianhu city. They did not strike, but joined hands with other ancient Buddhas and Buddhas to construct a Vajra revolving formation, blocking all the messengers sent to Mianhu city from Liangzhu. The teleportation formations between Mianhu city and Liangzhu were also disturbed by their great power, so that no one could enter or leave the city. Now, 6 sacred emperors were 300,000 miles east of Mianhu city with Diyu, many supreme oracles, and revered elders of the secret palace, doing their best to fight against the Vajra revolving formation. But with the 9 World Exalted Ones suppressing the formation with supreme artifacts of primal, how could the 6 sacred emperors break their formation? Mianhu City was besieged, but the army of the Shizo dynasty did not attack the city. The situation had become extremely strange. King Yangshan knew that the Shizo dynasty was, to put it bluntly, the Buddhist league that was plotting against the whole Yuxiong army. If those soldiers of Yuxiong army, whose cultivation bases were at least in the realm of second Panga heaven, submitted to the Buddhist league, the enormous power of faith they would provide to the Buddhist league would be an extremely terrifying thing. With the power of faith provided by these believers with powerful cultivation bases and abundant energy essence, the Buddhist League would be able to elevate at least dozens of ancient Buddhas to the level of world-exalted ones. With that, the overall strength of the Buddhist League would skyrocket, and both the Tao League and Diyu would be at a disadvantage. More importantly, if the whole Yuxiong army betrayed Diyu and joined the Buddhist League, it would be a fatal blow to the morale of Diyu's army and people. That was why King Yangshan came to Diyu in such a hurry and asked Wuqi to help. Although King Yangshan did not know Wuqi's background, a man who could negotiate with the Wahuang clan and make a deal with him, and who could make the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan give him kunwa swords, could not be an ordinary figure? What King Yangshan was worried about now was the safety of Gao and Yuxiong army. As long as they were safe, he would not hesitate to ask Wuqi for help. Just as Wuqi's divine sense swept across Pangu continent, Gao was drowning his sorrows in wine in the great hall of the city lord mansion. The army of the Shizo dynasty did not attack the city, which was a good thing. But the fact that Mianhu City was cut off from the outside world was a bad sign. With the power of Diyu, the fact that all means of communication were cut off at the same time proved that the enemy's strength had completely suppressed the forces in Liangzhu. Otherwise, such a thing would never have happened. This proved that even the top experts of Diyu could not break through the enemy's blockade and infiltrate Mianhu City. What kind of terrifying expert would be able to do this? At least, Gao knew that 6 Saint Emperors were now in Liangzhu, and all of them had the cultivation bases of peak-level Dao-breaking experts. Since none of them could enter Mianhu City to deliver the message, the Buddhist League must have sent experts of Dao-breaking realm who were stronger or more numerous than them. Gao picked up the wine cup and took a sip, then threw it to the ground and walked out of the great hall with his hands clasped behind his back. Standing on the steps outside the great hall, Gao glanced at the cloudy sky and sighed heavily. Then he walked back into the great hall with his hands clasped behind his back, grabbed the wine jar, and took a gulp of the strong wine. The Buddhist League was after Yuxiong army. This army was not only large in number and formidable in combat strength, but more importantly, it was the symbol of Diyu. Before the 2 great upheavals in Liangzhu, Yuxiong army was the imperial army of Diyu. Once Yuxiong army was subdued by the Buddhist League, it was easy to imagine how great the impact on Diyu would be. Perhaps, the army would be utterly defeated, and Diyu would be completely wiped out by the Shizo dynasty. Gao strode into the great hall. With a gloomy face, he cupped his fist at Gao and said, "Your Highness, the situation is not good." Sitting straight behind the table, Gao looked coldly at Gao and asked in a deep voice, "What's not good?" Gao gnashed his teeth and said, "Today, I brought my men and captured 7 bald donkeys in the city. They were spreading lies to deceive the people in the city. I tortured and tortured them, but no matter what I did, their bodies were not harmed at all." The corner of Gao's eye twitched. He pondered for a moment, and as he was about to give the order to behead the captured monks, Jihu and his 3 younger brothers hurried into the hall. "Father," cried Jihu breathlessly, "the morale of the soldiers under my command is not stable. Some people in the camp are spreading rumors that Diyu has lost his virtue and Shizo dynasty is now the human emperor. A month ago, these rumors were spread by only 3 to 5 people in the camp, and I've already beheaded them all. But now, almost all the soldiers in the camp are saying the same thing. Father, what should we do about it?" Upon hearing Jihu's words, Gao was so angry that he smashed the wine cup on Jihu's head and bellowed, "You bastards! The morale of the soldiers is not stable. Why are you here instead of calming them down?" Gnashing his teeth, Gao knew that the assassins of Buddhist League were about to arrive. It had been a month since Mianhu City was cut off from the outside world. Whatever tricks Buddhist League had up their sleeves, they should have used up by now. Judging by the fact that such rumors were spreading in Yuxiong army's camp, Things were not looking good. The sky was dark. Dozens of huge candles as thick as an arm were lit in the hall, glinting brightly. Shadows could be seen jumping violently on the walls of the hall. Gao looked coldly at his four sons and asked, "Why are you here instead of calming the morale of the soldiers?" Ji-hu and the others exchanged a glance, then suddenly dropped to their knees at the same time. "Father," said Ji Bao in a deep voice, "the communication between Liangzhu and Mianhu City has been cut off for a month, which shows that Liangzhu is powerless. Father, please." With a flash, Gao came in front of Gao. "What nonsense are you talking about?" He snapped at Ji-hu and the others who were kneeling on the ground. Ji-hu looked up at Gao and sneered, "We'll discuss it with father ourselves. What right do you, a bastard, have to speak here?" Ji-hu rose to his feet, ignoring Gao, who was standing in front of him, and said in a cold voice, "Father, the Buddhist League must subdue Yuxiong army. Every soldier in Yuxiong army has the cultivation base of second Panga heaven. Although their divine power is weak, their strength is amazing. As long as they give up the cultivation techniques of the human race and cultivate the divine power of the Buddhist League, within 3 to 5 years, they will become an invincible army of golden bodhisattvas." "You," Gao glared at Ji-hu and snapped through clenched teeth. "Are you born bald donkeys of the Buddhist League, or did you only submit to the Buddhist League after birth?" Ji-hu and Ji Bao laughed at the same time. "Since your highness has asked, I, Monk Jingyi, offer my greetings," said Ji-hu in a deep voice. "I am Monk Jingyuan," said Ji Bao with a smile. Ji Chao and Ji Leng laughed as well. They took a step forward and stood beside Ji-hu and Ji Bao, then suddenly struck out at the same time. Ji-hu and Ji Bao had their full attention on Gao, so they didn't manage to react in time, and their heads were chopped off by Gao's axe. Ji Chao and Ji Leng sneered and threw out a talisman, crushing Ji-hu and Ji Bao's heads into pieces. Gao's four sons were fighting among themselves, and in just a blink of an eye, 2 of them had died. Gao and Gao were stunned. Chapter 1046. 300,000 miles east of Mianhu City, 9 revered Buddhas were sitting cross-legged on lotus thrones in the void according to the positions of the 9 palaces. Behind them were 36 ancient Buddhas whose bodies were green, and 36 Buddhas whose bodies were golden. Next to the ancient Buddhas and the Buddhas, thousands of bodhisattvas revealed their golden bodies and sat cross-legged on the lotus thrones, while countless arhats, vajras, heavenly kings, jitis, and other deities of the Buddhist League stood at attention. All the almighty experts of the Buddhist League were performing the Vajra Mudra with their hands, and silently reciting the unbreakable Vajra mantra. A golden wheel of light, tens of thousands of miles in diameter, had surrounded them, and above it sat a Vajra, clad in a lotus leaf skirt and with his upper body glinting in a golden light. This Vajra was about 100,000 miles tall, and its entire body emanated an immeasurable amount of light that illuminated the void. Wherever the light reached, time and space froze, all spirit energies in the void were frozen, and all tangible and intangible existences were imprisoned. Flocks of birds froze in midair, unable to move, countless beasts froze in the woods, and all the fishes, shrimps, crabs, and loaches in the water were frozen as well. Flowers, grass, and trees were motionless, and even the pale green wind between them was frozen. Apart from the twitching lips of the almighty experts of the Buddhist League, everything in this void was completely frozen. With the sword of Qin Emperor in his hand, Yingzheng was hacking and slashing at the void from tens of thousands of miles away. Every time he swung his sword, a magnificent black dragon-shaped energy would come whistling out. The invincible sword Qi whizzed over. Once it fell into this part of the void, it suddenly shattered and disintegrated without any warning. The scene was like a piece of tofu smashing into a steel wall at an extremely high speed, shattering into pieces without leaving a single dregs behind. Yen Dan and the other 4 saint emperors, together with countless experts of Diyu, stood on a cloud platform, staring at the Vajra wheel formation in front of them with eyes burning with fury. The formation did not have any offensive power, and its only effect was absolute defense. It was based on the indestructibility of the Buddhist League, and combined the tremendous willpower of the 9 reincarnations, 36 ancient Buddhas, 36 Buddhas, countless bodhisattvas, arhats and other Buddhist deities, together with the countless believers in their Buddhist kingdoms, and transformed it into the power of Vajra to seal the void with a mystic art of the Buddhist League. The defense of the formation could even withstand the attack of a Dao-fusing expert, and once it was completed, almost no one in the world could break it. Not only that, but it also used a supreme treasure of primal, Vajra Muni, could also form the core of the formation, but it also doubled its defense. No one could break it unless 4 or 5 Dao-fusing experts joined to. Of reincarnations. Ing Zheng was venting the anger in his heart crazily, but no matter how he attacked, the formation remained unmoved. Beneath the 9 revered Buddhas, countless almighty experts of the Buddhist League were looking coldly at Ing Zheng's futile and crazy attacks. Their lips curved into an enigmatic, mocking smile. Even if you are the reincarnation of the sacred Emperor Zhuanxiu, even if you have the overall strength of a peak-stage Dao-breaking expert, you are just a mortal. Can you, a mortal, fight against gods and Buddhas? All the almighty experts of Buddhist League, including those weaker Vajras and Arhats, looked down at Ing Zheng condescendingly. Mortal, what right do you have to fight against gods and Buddhas? A loud whistle rang out. A supreme oracle with a violent temperament roared furiously, and cast out his supreme tower. The 100-mile-tall supreme tower spun rapidly, slamming into the Vajra revolving formation with a gust of chilly wind and ghost flame. A deafening rumble rang out, and the supreme tower was blown to pieces. Sticky black liquid gushed out of the supreme oracle's 7 apertures at the same time, and he slumped weakly onto the cloud platform. The supreme tower had turned into ashes, but it did not even touch the true body of the Vajra revolving formation. Yin Dan, Chu Ping, and the others stared at the freakish formation in exasperation, but there was nothing they could do. They had no idea what had happened to Mianhu City, but they were stuck here, unable to move. Moreover, some almighty experts of Buddhist League had cast a spell that could reverse the void. So anyone who tried to approach Mianhu City from the outside world would be sent directly to the front of the formation. They had sent out hundreds of reinforcements to take a detour to Mianhu City, but in the end, they all returned to the vicinity of the cloud platform. Yuxiong army is in danger, murmured Wei Wuji gloomily. He clasped his hands behind his back and clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles made cracking noises. After this calamity, the human race will destroy the Buddhist League, he said in a gloomy voice. The few sacred emperors, including Chu Ping, who had the best temper, nodded with a gloomy face. After this calamity, if the Wahuang clan's calculation worked out, and the human race could control their own destiny, the Buddhist League would be completely destroyed. But the most important task now was to break the Vajra revolving formation and rescue Mianhu City. Only heaven knew what was happening in Mianhu City now. Had Gao been killed by the traitor of Yuxiong army? Or had Yuxiong army fallen into the hands of Buddhist League? In the minds of Yin Dan and the others, they would rather destroy Yuxiong army themselves than let it fall into the hands of Buddhist League. If Yuxiong army, with its huge number and formidable cultivation base, fell into the hands of Buddhist League, it would have a strong impact on the morale of Diyu's army and the people. They would rather destroy Yuxiong army and falsely say that they were completely wiped out in the war with Buddhist League than let them surrender to Buddhist League. If we still can't break this formation in 3 days, I will destroy the area 1 million miles around Mianhu City, and let all the bald donkeys in that area be buried with Yuxiong army, said Yin Dan, gritting his teeth and grinning coldly as he slowly clasped his hands behind his back and said, "They should never have come to Pangu continent. Now that they are here, they should be prepared to die." Ing Zheng, who was hacking wildly with his sword, put away the sword of Qin Emperor and flew back to the cloud platform. He snorted coldly and said, "We should strike now. Wipe out all the living beings within 1 million miles around Mianhu City. Or wipe out all the living beings in the entire territory of Shizo dynasty at the same time. Even if there are some casualties, isn't the strongest function of the human race to have babies?" The 5 saint emperors gave Ing Zheng a look, their eyes flickering at the same time. "If we really want to use that method, we'll just have to wait for a few more leaders of Buddhist League and Dao League to come here," said Tianwen in a gloomy voice. "If only 3 to 5 people from Buddhist League and Daozu can come to Pangu continent, we can't wipe them out, but we'll have to suppress them as well." While the saint emperors were venting their anger, The void next to them suddenly swirled, and a black nine-tailed scorpion, about 1,000 feet long and bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws, appeared in a sorry state near the cloud platform. Wuxia lay sprawled on the back of the huge black scorpion, cursing words like, "bald donkeys." Yen Dan and the others were taken aback, and then they were overjoyed. The Buddhist League had deployed a void-reversing formation around Mianhu City, which would not prevent the intrusion of divine sense. Therefore, Wuxia could easily see what was happening in the city. He happened to see Gao's 2 sons behead 2 of his brothers with axes. With his heart burning with anger, Wuxia exercised a divine ability and hurried to the vicinity of Mianhu City. With his overall strength of a half-step Dao-fusing expert, Wuxia had consumed 90% of his magic power in just a moment, and he had teleported from the edge of Pangu World to a place 1,000,000 miles above Mianhu City. After swallowing a few spirit pills to restore his magic power, he rode the 9 tails and sped toward Mianhu City. However, in his haste he failed to discover the existence of the void-reversing formation. When he was less than 300,000 miles from the city, he was suddenly surrounded by darkness. When he woke up, he found himself in front of the Vajra revolving formation. Shaking his head, Wuxia climbed up from the back of the 9 tails, looking a little embarrassed. The 9 tails, whose mind was also in a mess just now, let out a furious roar. He widened his eyes and let out a long howl at the Vajra revolving formation. A soul-stirring evil howl whistled through the air, but it hit the formation and bounced back. With a loud crash, tens of thousands of DU elites on the cloud platform rolled their eyes and fell to the ground. Their souls were swept out of their bodies by the howl. The supreme oracles brought here by Yen Dan and the others shrieked in fear. Hastily, they cast a mystic technique and forced the souls of these tens of thousands of elite warriors back into their fleshly bodies. Then they poured some secret medicines into their mouths and hurriedly merged their souls with their fleshly bodies. Only then did they avoid a great loss for no reason. "Wuxia," snapped Yen Dan. "What are you doing?" Wuxia shook his head and frowned as he looked at Yen Dan. He stamped his foot against the ground to signal the 9 tails to calm down, then flew up to the cloud platform and bowed to the 6 saint emperors one by one. He had no choice. Princess Zhonglu had made Wuxia marry 90,000 women from 6 dynasties, and all 6 saint emperors were his fathers-in-law. No matter how strong Wuqia's cultivation base would be in the future, he would have to humble himself in front of these 6 saint emperors. After a quick conversation, Wuxia understood what had happened, and he could not help but feel conflicted. The Vajra revolving formation was almost a cheat-like formation. Among all the great formations of Buddhist League, the Vajra revolving formation required the most manpower, and its power was the most monotonous. When 9 peak-level Dao-breaking experts put aside their skin and focused on defense, it was a real headache. Even though Wuxia had obtained the blueprint of the Vajra revolving formation from Buddha Futu, he could do nothing about it. It could even be said that the Vajra revolving formation was a rare, flawless formation in Pangu World. It did not use any technique or change. All the power in the formation was gathered for defense. It was simple and pure, which made it very difficult to deal with, especially when the formation core was guarded by a supreme treasure of primal like Vajramuni. It made the formation even more invulnerable. With a gloomy face, Wuxia told the 6 saint emperors what he had seen with his divine sense, which made their faces turn even more unsightly. Although they did not know what had happened to Gao's son, now that 2 heads had been chopped off, would Gao's head be the next one to be chopped off? Damn baldies! Ing Zheng's eyes turned a horrible blood-red color. Grinning hideously, he said, "Let's do it. No matter how heavy the casualties are, let's kill these bald donkeys first." He. With a flip of his palm, a fist-sized pitch-black pearl appeared in Ing Zheng's palm. It emanated a suffocating aura that made Wuqia's heart twitch and made him break out in a cold sweat. It was as if death was right before his eyes. Wuxia gave Ing Zheng a look with difficulty. His instinct told him that the pearl had the power to severely wound a Dao-fusing expert. What the hell was this thing? Chapter 1047. What the hell is this? Wuxia was taken aback by the pearl taken out by Ing Zheng. Staring at the black pearl, The corner of Wu Qi's eyes twitched. This was a freak. How could something like this exist in this world? A thing that could severely injure a Dao-fusing expert? Moreover, it seemed to be a single-use item, which meant that it was some kind of specially refined Yin thunder. But even an almighty expert of the Dao-fusing realm could not possibly refine something like this. Could he? Wu Qi almost went crazy. Which almighty expert of the Dao-fusing realm would be so bored as to refine such a dangerous item? Once this pearl exploded, it would probably blow up almost half of Pangu continent. The muscles on Ing Zheng's face twitched, making him look very ferocious. Standing next to him, Yandan drew a rune and sealed off the energy ripples emanating from the pearl. With a gloomy face, he too took out a pearl that looked exactly the same. Yandan gritted his teeth and said, "This is Pangu continent, and this is the Oblivion Thunder, refined with the destructive force brought by the great Saint Pangu when he created the world. It can annihilate everything when it strikes." Who refined this thing? Wu Qi was really going crazy. This thing was too dangerous. Wu Qi instinctively sensed that if he was accidentally struck by this thing, he would definitely be blown to pieces and his soul would vanish. Even if he protected himself with a supreme artifact of primal, he might not be able to withstand the power of this Oblivion Thunder. This was simply a cheating device that shouldn't exist in this world. Someone collected the destructive force brought by the great Saint Pangu when he created the world, and refined it into the prototype of the Oblivion Thunder. Then, Her Majesty used the myriad spirit cauldron to remove 90% of its violent aura. It took her countless eons to finally form it. Chu Ping also pulled out a pearl and played with it in his hand. He blinked his eyes and murmured in a low voice, "Who do you think could collect this thing when the great Saint Pangu created the world?" Wu Qi understood. When the great Saint Pangu created the world, with that tremendous power, which Chaos Fiend God dared to approach, Pangu was the only one who could collect the power of destruction back then. And he was the only one who could create the prototype thunder. Since the Wahuang clan controlled the All-Spirits Cauldron, which was the original spirit treasure of Pangu world, it wasn't strange for her to have the thunder. Perhaps, Wahuang clan was the guardian of the entire Pangu world, chosen by Pangu. Otherwise, why would she take part in the creation of human beings, design the Tao in Buddhism, and even take out the thunder? Clearly, this was a trump card prepared by Pangu for Wahuang clan. If Ji Hao had hundreds of these, he could simply throw them to the 33 skies and Vulture Mountain, and the entire Pangu world would be peaceful. Other than the 7 Buddhas and 9 Taoists, the rest of the Taoists and monks were all dead. Wu Qi wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and asked with a gloomy face, "How many of these things are there?" The 6 saint emperors glanced at each other. Tianwen narrowed his eyes and said softly, "It's not a lot, but it's not a little either. There are at least 100 of them. However, the power of the thunder is too great. Once it is used without limit, a small half of Pangu world will be destroyed, and the hard work of countless eons will be wasted." Wu Qi's face turned even more unsightly. There were at least 100 of them? That was to say, there were probably more? How many other strange and dreadful things did the Wahuang clan have? Fortunately, the Wahuang clan was not a hysterical woman. Otherwise, Wu Qi could not imagine what would happen to the Tao and Buddhist League right now. Moving like a bolt of lightning, Wu Qi snatched the thunder from the hands of Chu Ping and the other 2 saint emperors, then shoved them into the small world inside his body. Ing Zheng and the other 2 saint emperors were taken aback, then grabbed Wu Qi and said anxiously, "Give them back now. What are you doing with them?" Just now, Wu Qi had used a technique from the Scroll of Stealing. Although the 6 saint emperors had the same cultivation base as him, they did not see how he snatched the 3 thunderballs away. Wu Qi just smiled. He slapped his chest and said, "If I help you break the Vajra revolving formation, I'll take these 3 thunderballs as my pay. Give me some time, and if I can't break the formation, I'll give them back to you." With the first thread of innate thievery energy coiling around the 3 thunderballs, Wu Qi was frantically analyzing what they were. If he could devour and digest them, Wu Qi would be able to form the thunderballs with the primal purple energy in the future. If he could form hundreds or thousands of such powerful weapons, who would Wu Qi be afraid of? But he had to be very careful when he was devouring them. If he was careless, the thunder might explode, and he would die without a burial place. Ying Zheng and the other saint emperors who grabbed Wuqi were stunned, then said in unison, "A gentleman's word." Clapping his hands, Wuqi laughed and said, "Don't worry, I'm a man of my word. Don't worry, I'm still trustworthy. Give me some time. If I can't break the Vajra revolving formation, I'll immediately return the 3 submerged thunders to you." Ying Zheng and the other 2 saint emperors immediately loosened their grip and cried out in a deep voice, "Be quick! We don't know what has happened in Mianhu City." Narrowing his eyes, Wuqi flew out of the cloud platform and gave a loud whistle, summoning Ninetails, who was baring his teeth in midair and charging fiercely at the Vajra revolving formation. Sitting cross-legged on the back of Ninetails, the man and the beast slowly flew toward the Vajra revolving formation. Dark Een Celestial Tower flew up from the top of Wuqi's head. A vast amount of starlight swirled down and turned into a huge starlight vortex that covered an area of 1,000 miles. Within this area, Wuqi sped up the flow of time 1,000,000 times with all his might, but he had no other choice. He had no choice but to speed up, for he did not have enough time to break the formation. He had to do it as soon as possible, so that he could save Gao. After all, they were friends. Wuqi could sit back and watch Gao be sacrificed on the battlefield, but he should never die in the hands of his own son. Whether it was the Buddhist League or the Tao League, it was too despicable for them to kill Gao's son. As the starlight vortex slowly approached the Vajra revolving formation, countless almighty experts of the Buddhist League turned to look at Wuqi at the same time. The 9 revered Buddhas laughed at the same time. Another fool who overestimated his own strength. Not even the 7 Buddhist patriarchs could break the Vajra revolving formation alone. It was true that Wuqi had an amazing cultivation base, even stronger than the 9 revered Buddhas, but how could he possibly break the formation? Together with all the almighty experts of the Buddhist League, the 9 revered Buddhas chanted the Vajra mantra in a low voice. The humming sound of the mantra turned into a deafening roar of a heavenly dragon that shook the heaven and earth. The avatar hovering above the formation became more and more solid. It was glowing with a golden light as if it was cast from pure gold. And a swastika was spinning slowly between its brows. In the center of the swastika was a white relic about the size of a human head, which was none other than the supreme treasure of primal world, Vajra Muni. The closer Wuqi and Jiawei got to the Vajra revolving formation, the slower they moved. When they were only 100 miles away from the formation, Wuqi felt like a fly soaked in glue, struggling to move even with all his strength. Fortunately, the 9-tailed was extremely strong. His shell looked smooth and round, but in fact, there was a trace of sharpness on its surface. The air that was sealed around the great formation sliced across his shell, making a rustling noise that sounded like meat being cut by a sharp knife. It took Wuqi and Jiawei 6 hours to cover the last distance of less than 100 miles. Now they were outside the Vajra revolving formation, and less than 3 feet in front of them was the golden light wheel that protected the almighty experts of the Buddhist League. With great difficulty, Wuqi stretched out his hand and punched the light wheel. The light wheel did not budge at all, and Wuqi could only feel an explosive counterforce coming whistling towards him, going through his arm and smashing into his internal organs. A deafening rumble rang out from within Wuqi's body, as the counterforce shook his internal organs. His heart, liver, spleen, and lungs were ringing at the same time like a great bell. A tremendous sound wave spread out from his body, turning into white shock waves that one could see with naked eyes and sweeping across the surroundings. The 9 revered ones in the core of the formation looked at Wuqi in surprise. The counterforce of that blow was enough to shatter an ordinary Tao-breaking realm zenith heaven golden immortal. Judging from the loud noise coming from inside Wuqi's body, it was obvious that the counterforce had shaken his internal organs. However, Wuqi didn't seem to be injured at all. This was simply impossible. This person is unfathomable. Disciples, do not be careless. The first-era sovereign warned in a low voice. Many great figures of the Buddhist sects in Chi-Chi looked at Wuqi, but soon, they could no longer see Wuqi's figure. The torrent of silver starlight turned into a huge whirlpool, slowly spinning around Wuqi. The power of the stars and the power of the formation clashed against each other, producing a loud rumbling sound. The dazzling fiery light flickered rapidly, and Wuqi's entire body was wrapped in all kinds of flashes. The 9 world venerables used their Buddhist eyes to spy on Wuqi, but they couldn't see what Wuqi was doing. Activating million times time acceleration, Wuqi's recently recovered magic power rapidly flowed away. Time flew by, but the Vajra Revolution Array wanted to freeze both time and space. Wuqi accelerated time, and the array froze time. 2 opposing forces clashed against each other, and suddenly, a ripple appeared on the golden wheel. Wuqi spat out a mouthful of blood, and the great figures of the Buddhist sects inside the array were shocked. Their chanting voices suddenly rose by a notch. Shaking the Vajra revolving formation with the strength of a single person was something that had happened before, but that was only when a few Buddhist ancestors were practicing the formation. The 9 world venerables chanted the name of Buddha in unison, and the power of the array immediately rose by 30%. Time acceleration, time freezing. Wuqi could make time flow a million times faster, but at this moment, the speed of time within 1,000 miles around him was decreasing rapidly. 1,000,000 times, 900,000 times, 800,000 times. In just a short quarter of an hour in the outside world, the speed of time within 1,000 miles around Wuqi had decreased to less than 1,000 times. Wuqi pressed both of his hands on the Vajra Revolution Array, transforming the small amount of grand mist purple energy in his body into the first strand of innate thieving energy, which kept seeping into the golden wheel. Wherever his hands touched the wheel, the golden wheel vibrated violently. Faintly, one could see wisps of golden Buddhist light flowing into Wuqi's body. His magic power, which had been greatly consumed, was rapidly recovering. Wuqi's divine sense had merged with the thieving energy, carefully seeping into the array inch by inch. Gradually, the time around Wuqi accelerated, and his divine sense had already touched the core of the array, the Vajramuni. Chapter 1048. In the main hall of the mayor's mansion in Mianhu City, Gao stared coldly at Ji Chao and Ji Lang, who had just killed his 2 elder brothers. Their heads rolled on the ground, and the blood gushing out from their necks was golden in color, emitting a faint scent of sandalwood, and even an ancient aura that came from a book made of linden leaves that had been lying on the ground for thousands of years. This was the unique aura of the blood of a hermit Buddhist cultivator. Clearly, Ji Hu and Ji Bao were the reincarnations of Buddhist cultivators. For a long time in the past, the Buddhist League had controlled the 6 paths of reincarnation through the netherworld. By paying a high enough price, the almighty monks of the Buddhist League could be reincarnated as members of the Diyu imperial clan, or even members of the noble clans. At first, these reincarnated people did not have good control over their cultivation base, so they were often killed right after they were reincarnated. Later on, the secret palace of Diyu discovered a secret technique that could detect whether a baby was a reincarnation of a Buddhist disciple through the energy reaction, and all kinds of strange signs in their body when they were reincarnated. But later on, the Buddhist League made great progress in the technique of reincarnation. When the souls of those eminent monks were reincarnated, all their antecedents were erased, and the power they had accumulated through thousands of reincarnations was stored in the reincarnation. When they grew up, they only needed to be cleansed by the Buddha's light of guidance, and they would immediately awaken the wisdom of their previous lives. The Buddha's power that they had accumulated for thousands of lives would instantly be injected into their bodies, and they could even attract the golden body of Buddha that they had condensed in their previous lives, allowing them to obtain great divine abilities and great power in the shortest time possible. That was what happened to Ji Hu and Ji Lang. They had been by Gao's side for decades, and everyone thought they were reincarnated naturally. But today, it seemed that they were indeed disciples of the Buddhist League, and they had been cleansed by the Buddha light, regaining the wisdom and power of their previous lives. This strong golden blood carried such a strange fragrance. These 2 guys who claimed to be Buddhist monks should have a higher cultivation base than ordinary Buddhist bodhisattvas. They might even have half a foot into the realm of Buddha. Gao stared blankly at the 2 corpses on the ground, as if he was seeing Ji Chao and Ji Lang for the first time. He trembled for a while, then pointed his finger at Ji Chao and Ji Lang and growled in a low voice. "You? What are you?" He had killed Ji Hu and Ji Bao, who were almost at the level of Buddha, with a single swing of his axe, without giving them any chance to perish together, and had easily destroyed their souls. How could Ji Chao and Ji Lang be ordinary people? Looking at their methods and the dense immortal energy around them, one could easily imagine their origins. Ji Che grinned and slightly shook his body. His tall and sturdy body became much slimmer, and his clothes turned into a watercolored Taoist robe. Looking at Gao, Ji Chao, whose face had become handsome and ethereal, chuckled and said, "Gao, King Wei Shan. Greetings, Wuyo." Ji Chai pursed his lips into a teasing smile, then shook his head, sighed and said, "Prince, I have been pretending to be your son for 3 whole years. This is not a good feeling at all. If your highness cannot make the wisest decision, don't blame me for teaching your highness a lesson before I send you on your way." Ji Lang sneered as well. With a sway of his body, he transformed into a stout Taoist clad in a red Taoist robe. Shaking his head, he looked at Gao and said with a smile, "I, Tianji, have been pretending to be your highness' son for 1 year and 6 months. He, when I address you as father, it is very intimate. Your highness. Do you understand?" Gao smiled and shook his head gently. How could he not understand? Taoist Wuyo and Taoist Tianji were pretending to be Gao's sons by using the art of possession. Those who could cast such a spell without being detected by the supreme oracles must be primordial immortals of Tao League, and almighty experts who specialized in soul-related mystic arts. Only they had the means to silently devour the souls and original spirits of 2 people. At the same time, their every move and every word did not reveal any flaws, and they could 100% pretend to be someone who had been possessed by them. This method was even worse than that of the Buddhism League, and it was even more impossible to guard against. The Buddhism League had a mystic art to detect the reincarnation of a person, and it could occasionally find out a few unlucky fellows who did not conceal their origins well. But possession relied on the power of a soul 1 trillion times stronger than that of an ordinary person to devour the soul of the possessed person, then destroy the person's soul and replace him. This was simply impossible to guard against. For the upper echelons of Diyu who practiced the cultivation techniques of the human race, except for the great oracles of the Directorate of Celestials and the Secret Palace, and those high-ranking warriors who were protected by the divine souls of powerful divine beasts, no one else could resist the art of possession. Furthermore, these primordial immortals did not practice the magic of the 5 elements or the mystic arts of earth, water, fire, or wind, but the divine abilities and mystic arts of the soul. Therefore, they did not even need their own bodies, as they could casually pick a fleshly body to unleash their strongest power. That was how Wuyo and Tianji worked. One had been by Gao's side for 3 years, and the other for 1 year and 6 months, but even Gao, their father and the closest person to them, did not notice anything unusual about them. Even Ji Hu and Ji Bao did not notice anything unusual about them, which was why they were beheaded by Wuyo and Tianji today. Gao clasped his hands behind his back and murmured in a low voice, "So my 4 sons are all gone?" Wuyo sighed softly and looked at Gao with a little pity. "Indeed, your highness, why were you born in the clan of Diyu? If your highness were a coward and incompetent man, you could still have a house full of beautiful wives and children. But your highness, you have such means and strength. You can't blame us for that." Gao nodded at Wuyo and said coldly, "What you have done is too despicable. You have disregarded the natural order of the world, and you will get what you deserve." Wuyo laughed again and said, "What do you mean by what you have said, your highness? The punishment of the heavenly Tao? But we are all protected by the boundless virtues, so why would the heavenly Tao punish us? Besides, they are the reincarnations of 4 bald donkeys from the Buddhist League, pretending to be your highness's sons. They have nothing to do with us. All we did was devour the souls of 2 bald donkeys, nothing else." Gao panted heavily as he took 2 steps back, and looked warily at Wuyo and Tianji. Gao did not give an order, so he did not move. It was not easy to deal with people like Wuyo and Tianji, and no one would attack them rashly. Gao exchanged a look with Wuyo and Tianji. After a long while, Wuyo said in a low voice, "Your highness, please give the order to kill all the Buddhist rebels in Yuxiong army, and then submit to Tao League. Right here in Mianhu City, Right here, Dao Ligue founded the Ling dynasty, and Zhang Tingjiao, a member of the imperial clan of the Ling dynasty, is the emperor of the Ling dynasty. He let out a strange laugh and said in a gloomy voice, "It is only a day's journey from here to Calmheart city of the Shizhou dynasty, and Yu Xiong army can raise the city to the ground with just one charge. If your highness can help us accomplish this great feat, in the future, your highness will be the divine king of all the Tai Huangzhengtian tribes in the 33 heavens on the list of investiture of the gods. In other words, your highness will be the lord of the Huangzhengtian tribes in the future." The lord of the Huangzhengtian tribes? Gao laughed, rocking back and forth as he cried out. "My 4 sons are exchanged for an illusory title of heavenly king? Hee. Are you trying to be the lord of the 33 heavens?" Wuyo and Tianji paid no attention to Gao's words. Tianji laughed and said, "Of course we already have a candidate for the position of lord of the 33 heavens," and, before he could finish, Gao's face had turned deathly pale. There is someone else colluding with you?" Wuyo and Tianji exchanged a glance. Then Wuyo said with a smile, "Your highness is indeed wise. You can see many things from the titles we Dao Ligue have set up. It's true that Du and a few other kings have accepted the rewards from Dao Ligue, and their status is no lower than your highness." Their status was no lower than Gao's? Was it referring to their current titles in Du or their future positions in the Celestial Court? If it was only their future positions in the Celestial Court, it would not matter. But if it meant that their current positions in Du were no lower than Gao's, what did that mean? Among the kings of Du's council, there were some who were colluding with Dao Ligue. These traitors who couldn't be killed, couldn't be completely killed. Gao clenched his fists tightly and said through clenched teeth, "Are you Dao Ligue fools or fools? The Buddhist League has set up a formation to cut off all the passages in and out of Mianhu City. So what if you Dao Ligue have subdued Yu Xiong army? Do you think you can lead Yu Xiong army to attack Calming Heart City from here?" Wuyo and Tianji exchanged a smile again. With a treacherous smile on his face, Wuyo said in a low voice, "Why does your highness need to worry about the Vajra revolving formation? It's true that the formation is powerful, but in our opinion, it's just a piece of cake. As long as your highness can help us subdue Yu Xiong army, your highness can just wait for the immortal blessings in the future." Gao glanced at Wuyo, then at Tianji. Suddenly he snapped, pulled out a 3-feet-long machete carved from black jade from his waist, and swung it down at Wuyo's head. The machete was engraved with dozens of ghost skulls of various sizes. As the machete cut through the air, these ghost skulls bared their teeth and wailed as if they were alive. The shrill cries made both Wuyo and Tianji tremble. This was the soul blade crafted by Du, a weapon that could restrain the immortal souls of immortals. As Gao made his move, Gao let out a furious howl and swung his sword at Tianji's neck. Gao burst into laughter and said, "Good Gao. Let's join hands and kill these bastards. Avenge your 4 brothers." A loud boom rang out. Wuyo and Tianji did not move, but Gao was knocked flying away, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Gao, who had just swung his sword at Tianji, stabbed it into the ground and slowly shook his left fist. It was he who had pulled back his sword at the last moment and punched Gao with all his strength. Gently shaking his neck, Gao walked slowly to Gao, who lay motionless on the ground for a long time, then gave Gao's head a heavy kick. "You ungrateful fool. I've been pretending to be your filial son and grandson for hundreds of years, and now I have to reap some rewards." Gao kept kicking Gao's chest and abdomen, breaking his ribs one by one. Gao stared at Gao in disbelief, completely stunned. Chapter 1049. The Great Spirit Vulture Mountain was known to the world as the Great Spirit Vulture Mountain. It was formed by 7 great mountains, each of which was the mother body of one of the Buddhas in the chaos. These 7 mountains were the most powerful prime magical treasures of the 7 Buddhas, and they formed the foundation of the Buddhist League. However, few people knew that at the end of the 7 great mountains, in the boundless void, there was a mysterious withered heart cave. Although it was called a cave abode, it was actually 10 times larger than the 7 great mountains of the Great Spirit Vulture Mountain combined. It was basically a small world that was independent of Pangu World. The quality of the natural energy here was only slightly inferior to that on Pangu continent, but because only a few almighty experts of the Buddhist League were qualified to cultivate in the Withered Heart Cave, the total amount of natural energy accumulated in the cave was very impressive. Not to mention that this place was filled with clear springs and golden lotuses. Not to mention that this place was filled with verdant hills and limpid waters. And not to mention that this place was filled with all sorts of wondrous plants such as the Langxian jade tree, that only occasionally appeared on the Kunlun mountain. Just the 7-story Buddhist pagodas that stood towering at the core of the Withered Heart Cave emitted a primordial and lofty aura. Looking at the material of the pagodas, they were clearly refined from white bones. The 7 pagodas were refined from the bones of each of the 7 Buddhist patriarchs, forming this 7 Buddha heart-locking formation, which was used to suppress the Withered Heart Cave. The 7 pagodas were crafted with their own bones. Such a huge investment had made the Withered Heart Cave the safest place for the Buddhist League, at least, since the creation of Pangu world. Even the 9 Daozu did not know that the Buddhist League had such a secret base. Surrounding the 7 pagodas were 63 so-called revered ones of the Buddhist League, who possessed the cultivation base of Tao-breaking realm. No one knew about these 63 revered ones. Even the current Lord Buddha, Amitabha, did not know that there were 63 almighty experts of the Buddhist League hiding in the Withered Heart Cave. 63 world venerables formed a lotus-like devil-suppressing formation with the pagoda as the core. Faint chanting of Buddhist scriptures spread in all directions, causing the entire Withered Heart Cave to tremble along with their chanting. The blood was as viscous as ink. When it landed on the ground, it was still wriggling like a poisonous snake. It was obvious that the evil power of 1,000 heads had invaded his body. The other 6 Buddhist ancestors casually raised their hands, and a beam of Buddhist light wrapped in golden Buddhist flame sprinkled down, burning the blood arrow cleanly. With a wry smile, Buddha Guarding Heart took out a few secret Buddhist pills and ate them. Then he asked in a low voice, "How's the situation in Mianhu City?" Buddha Guarding Heart smiled faintly and said, "The Vajra formation has been laid out, with Vajra Amitabha as its core. No one can break it unless those few shameless ones strike in person. We've already planted so many people in the city. As long as that King Wei Shan Gao submits to us, the entire Yuxiong army will be in our hands." Guarding Heart smiled contentedly and breathed a sigh of relief. Subconsciously, his weak divine sense swept toward the direction of Mianhu City on Pangu continent, and his unsightly face suddenly turned deathly pale. Guardian Heart angrily slammed his palm on the ground and shouted, "Where's Attendant Golden Mist?" A fragrant breeze drifted by, and then a handsome young man, standing 6 feet tall, with a body as white as ivory and a pair of eyes shining like golden stars, strode out of the breeze, holding a pestle measuring 12 feet long with both hands. Attendant Jinlan bowed slightly to Guarding Heart and cried out in a deep voice, "Buddha, I Jinlan am here. May I know what is your decree?" Buddha Guarding Heart said nothing. He pointed a finger in the direction of Mianhu City on Pangu continent, then opened his mouth and spat out a relic about the size of a thumb, glinting so brightly that no one could look at it directly. Inside of it, there seemed to be countless worlds hidden in the relic. Buddha Guarding Heart gave a soft snort as he handed the relic, which he had spent a great deal of time condensing, to Attendant Jinlan. The other 6 Buddhist ancestors also sent their divine sense in the direction of Mianhu City, and what they saw made their faces flicker at the same time. These days, they had been busy helping Buddha Guarding Heart heal, and they had no time to spend on trivial matters in the outside world. But all of a sudden, such a big problem had happened. 2 of the 4 Buddhist League cultivators they had planted around Gao had been possessed by primordial immortals who specialized in cultivating the mystic arts of souls from the Tao League. How shameless! The 6 Buddhist ancestors growled in unison. If it had not been for the ambush set up by Wahuang clan in advance, and the fact that Tao-fusing experts were strictly prohibited from participating in the investiture of gods, they would have attacked the Daoyuotian cultivators. This was simply too shameless. Did they think it was easy for the Tao League to plant 4 spies through the Tao of transmigration? How could the Tao League be so unreasonable as to possess the bodies of these spies? This was too unskillful. The 6 Buddhist ancestors stared at Attendant Jinlan with bright eyes. This was the first time he had received so much attention from so many Buddhist ancestors, and he could not help but break out in a cold sweat. Hastily, he took the natal relic condensed by Buddha guarding heart, then transformed into a gust of fragrant wind and sped toward Pangu continent. Attendant Jinlan knew what Buddha guarding heart meant. With this natal relic, he could fuse it into the Vajra Umitba formation outside Mianhu city, transforming the defensive formation into a huge barrier. Within the coverage of this barrier, all Taoist magic and immortal magic could not be used, and the power of the divine abilities of the Buddhist League would be increased by more than 100 times. With this, even if the Tao League had countless men lying in ambush in Mianhu city, they would have no choice but to surrender and let the disciples of the Buddhist League kill them at will. Yu Xiong army was related to the Buddhist League's great plan of conquering Diyu. How could they allow this army to fall into the hands of the Tao League? Along the way, attendant Jinlan rushed to Pangu continent in a hurry. But before he arrived at Mianhu city, a great change had taken place. Inside the city, Taoist Wuyo and Taoist Tianji burst into laughter. Taoist Wuyo nodded and said, "Your Highness, we have plenty of time to discuss some issues. As for those bald monks outside the city, they are not worth mentioning." Jiao. "Oh no, eldest senior brother godly hunter, please use more strength. He will not yield if you don't use some strength." Gao's pupils constricted. He barely managed to raise his arms to block the fierce kick from godly hunter, who had possessed Gao for hundreds of years. A crack rang out, and Gao's arms were broken. He grunted as godly hunter's foot landed on his chest, causing him to spray a mouthful of blood into the distance. Laughing out loud, Taoist divine hunter squatted down and slapped Gao again and again. Taoist god hunter's slap was so strong that even with Gao's cultivation base, there was no way he could withstand it. Soon, his cheeks were swollen, and the skin on his cheeks cracked. Blood sprayed into the air along with the slaps. "Father Gao, King Weishan, you bitch," said godly hunter in a ferocious voice. Clutching Gao's neck with both hands, he said in a cold voice, "If you don't cooperate with us, then you will die." A strange smile appeared on Gao's face as he stared at the sky outside the door and said coldly, "You have killed the spy planted by the Buddhist League around me. You have sabotaged the Buddhist League's plan to subdue Yu Xiong army. There is a Buddhist League formation outside that has sealed off the void. You have nowhere to run." Taoist Tianji laughed. With a flick of his finger, he threw out a talisman. A green talisman, no more than 3 inches long, shot out into the sky and exploded into a blinding green light, condensing into a huge green lotus that swayed left and right in the wind. The green lotus radiated a dazzling green light that could be seen from hundreds of thousands of miles away. Wuqi's divine sense had just penetrated the core of the Vajra formation, and was carefully seeping into the Vajra Muni. Under Wuqi's divine sense, the true face of the Vajra formation, which was almost a cheat in defense, was revealed to him. With the Vajra Muni as its core, the Buddhist energy of the 9 revered ones, 36 ancient Buddhas, 36 Buddhas, and the power of countless bodhisattvas, arhats, vajras and heavenly kings, all combined into a golden Muni pearl that hovered in the sky. The 9 revered ones surrounded the Vajra Muni in the 9 palaces formation. In the middle of them, a beam of white light shot out from the top of the head of one of the revered ones, which carried a white lotus, and the Vajra Muni hovered in the middle of its pistil. The Buddhist energy of all the Buddhist League's sacred beings had been refined and purified by the Vajra Muni. In order to break the formation, one must destroy the Vajra Muni pearl and all the sacred beings guarding the formation at the same time. This was something that even the few Buddhist patriarchs could not do, let alone the others. Carefully exploring the formation with his divine sense, Wuqi racked his brains, trying to find a way to cause some trouble to the formation. Inside the golden Vajra Muni pearl was a vast and boundless void. All the sacred Buddhist energy of the Buddhist League had transformed into a huge golden whirlpool in this round space, constantly fusing into the core of the Vajra Muni pearl. The core was like a black hole, absorbing and spitting out an immeasurable amount of Buddhist energy, transforming it into a strange and extremely hard energy that filled the entire formation. Wuqi was like a tiny sesame seed at the edge of a vast ocean, staring blankly at the boundless raging tide of Buddhist energy. His power alone could not pose any threat to this flawless vortex of Buddhist energy. Although his cultivation base had reached the level of Tao-fusing realm, his magic power and cultivation base were even weaker than an ancient revered one of the revered ones of the Buddhist League. After all, how many years had Wuxia been cultivating in this life? There was no way he could compete with these almighty experts of the Buddhist League, who had cultivated for several hundreds of thousands of eons. After staring blankly at the raging tide of Buddhist energy for a long time, Wuxia gritted his teeth, and was about to use the technique in Scroll of Stealing to forcibly extract the Buddhist energy and transform it into his own magic power. But the raging tide of Buddhist energy was too huge. With Wuxia's current cultivation base, he was like a little mouse trying to eat a mountain, and if he was not careful, he might be crushed by the mountain. Just as Wuxia was about to make his move, the green talisman soared into the sky, and the huge green lotus drifted in the sky. Among the 9 revered ones of the Buddhist League sitting cross-legged in the Vajramuni pearl, 3 of them suddenly laughed at the same time and said, "Excellent, excellent. The truth has finally come to light." The golden bodies of the 3 revered ones disintegrated, and dozens of white natal relics, each the size of a rice bucket, soared into the sky. They emitted a blinding light, then turned into a faint rain of light that drifted down from the sky. The natal relics vanished in a puff of smoke, and 3 immortal souls shrouded in purple mist and golden light slowly emerged from the rain of light. 3 enormous purple jade talismans, each 360 miles long, shot out from the bodies of the 3 immortal souls, smashing onto the Vajramuni pearl amidst countless electric arcs. Suddenly, the vortex of Buddhist energy inside the Vajramuni pearl became stagnant, and then it flowed backward with a boom. Wild with joy, Wuxia immediately sent all his divine will into the vortex of Buddhist energy. Chapter 1050. Sect leader Miao Yuan cried out in astonishment. "Are you saying that there are Buddhists in Palace of Dao Yuan?" The Buddhist League had sent out 9 world venerables to arrange the Great Vajra Amitabha formation, but 3 of them had suddenly disintegrated their golden bodies and self-destructed their natal relics. From the disintegrated golden bodies and relics, 3 Taoist immortal souls came out. Moreover, they had launched a suicidal attack, abandoning the enormous immortal energy contained in their immortal souls, and reversing the formation's core, turning the whole formation into a mess. In Palace of Dao Yuan, the 9 Daozu exchanged a glance and smiled. Purple-browed Daozu slowly rose to his feet and pointed at a Taoist, who was sitting not far away from him, clad in a purple robe with golden edges and a large golden 8 trigrams embroidered on his chest. This Taoist also had the cultivation base of Tao-breaking realm. He was the famous sect leader Miao Yuan, among the sect leaders of the 33 heavens of Dao League. His immortal magic was extremely powerful, and his artifact crafting technique was known as the best in Dao League. Now they had simply abandoned their golden bodies and relics, which they had acquired through countless years of arduous cultivation in the Buddhist League. As Yuan Ling had been sucked into the list of deification, there was no need to keep this list a secret anymore. After Yuan Ling was sucked into the list of deification, purple-browed Taoist stood up and pulled out Taoist Miao Yuan. He had the intention of killing the chicken to scare the monkey. Taking a deep breath, purple-browed Taoist sighed faintly and said, "After countless eons of arduous cultivation, they have also become revered ones, holding a high position and great power in the Buddhist League. Fortunately they still have a filial heart. After so many years, they haven't forgotten us, the few masters and seniors who taught them." The sect leader pointed his finger out, and a 3-inch-long immortal weapon, which looked as if it were made of crystal, silently pierced through Taoist Miao Yuan's forehead, destroyed his immortal body, and pierced through the core of his immortal soul. Taoist Miao Yuan gave Taoist Long Eyebrow a cold smile and said, "What are you talking about, Daozu? We only seek victory, regardless of the means. Isn't this what the few Daozu always say? Heh, if the 3 world venerables Universal Era, Huasher, and Yuancher weren't from Daozu, how would you know my identity? How many spies could there be in the Dao sect who could become a true disciple of Daozu? Getting rid of one of them was no less than cutting off an arm of a few Buddhas. It was equivalent to getting rid of a big problem for the Dao sect. Zime Daozu explained the cause and effect of the matter. 3 spiritual lights flashed in the list of deification. The 3 powerful figures of Hautian Taoism, who had just disturbed the Vajra Amitabha formation and destroyed the arrangement of Buddhism, also told their fellow disciples how they got the list from the list of deification. In addition, Taoist Miao Yuan had obediently put on his kasaya and revealed his bald head. The many mighty figures of the Tao sects in the primordial Tao palace sighed softly. The world venerables of Buddhism were equivalent to the great sect masters of the 33 heavens of Tao sect. There were actually 3 world venerables who were spies of Tao sect. This shocking scene was naturally seen by all the mighty figures of Tao sect in the primordial Tao palace. Hearing Taoist Purple Eyebrow's question, Sect Master Miao Yuan hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "I saw it. I really didn't expect that the Daozu's supernatural power was so great that they were unpredictable. Even among the world venerables of Buddhism, there are fellow Taoists hidden." This list was a top secret in Buddhism. Except for the 7 Buddhas, only a few of the Buddha's loyal confidants knew the details. Recently, Buddhism suffered the calamity of the fiend god from the outer domain. The great vulture mountain was in a mess, and the 7 Buddhas were in seclusion in the withered heart cave to heal their injuries. Buddhism was without a leader, and the 3 world venerables were lucky enough to get this list. The Daozu glanced at each other and sighed at the same time. Taoist Miao Yuan smiled, looked at Taoist Purple Eyebrow, nodded and said, "Daozu, today I will call you Uncle Master for the last time. Tao sect is powerful, but Buddhism is destined to be the master of this world. You have fallen into the Buddha's trap and lost. Tao sect, why don't you submit to Buddhism and join forces? In the future, there will be many benefits for you, Daozu." Staring at Sect Master Miao Yuan, Purple Eyebrow nodded and said, "Yes. Just now, the 3 fellow Taoists who sacrificed countless eons of cultivation to destroy the formation in the Vajra Amitabha formation are the senior brothers of all the disciples here. Long before you joined Tao sect, they were ordered to sneak into Buddhism." Taoist Purple Eyebrow and the other Daozu could not help but burst out laughing. Even green-browed Daozu, who was in the worst mood, could not help but burst out laughing. Sitting next to Taoist Long Eyebrow, green-browed Daozu closed his eyes. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly, and then his face, which was as round and fair as an ancient moon, became as lifeless as an ancient well, without any change in his expression. Sect Master Miao Yuan was one of green-browed Daozu's true disciples. Shaking his head gently, green-browed Daozu said coolly, "Kill his immortal body and immortal soul, and leave his Yuan Ling to enter the list of deification. Since he advocates for Buddhism so much, spare his life, and let us see how Buddhism declines. In the future, when the celestial court is conferred the title of deification, we will confer him a lowly position, so that he will regret what he did today." The 9 Daozu sighed in unison, shaking their heads at the same time. Taoist Long Eyebrow said coldly, "The Wahuang clan is indeed vicious, but compared to those few bald thieves, they are even more despicable." Spitting loudly, Taoist Long Eyebrow cursed in a low voice, "They are not even as good as a woman. These few bald thieves are really despicable." Sect Master Miao Yuan remained silent, staring at Taoist Purple Eyebrow. But as soon as Mingguang appeared, the 7 sect masters in front of him cried out at the same time, and a large cloud rose from the top of their heads. Purple, golden, cyan, white, and red lotuses with 5 colors burst out from the cloud. With the combined power of the 7 of them, together with the various powerful restrictive spells in the Palace of Tao Origin, they forcibly sealed the enormous immortal energy that was about to explode inside Taoist Miao Yuan's body. Taoist Purple Eyebrow sighed softly, then straightened his waist and cried out, "Quickly subdue the Yuxiong army in Mianhu City, and announce this to the whole realm of Diyu. Tell them that the human emperor of Diyu is tyrannical, and that Yuxiong army has submitted to the new emperor, Liu Bang, and will certainly plead for the human race and create another glorious era." The thousands of almighty experts in the Palace of Tao Origin received the order in unison, and hundreds of them immediately walked out of the palace. Those who could sit quietly in the Palace of Tao Origin were the top almighty experts of the Tao League. The 33 heavens of the celestial court were guarded by 3 great sect masters of Tao-breaking realm every day. Together with their subordinate sects and the many experts in their sects, the thousands of people in the palace of Tao origin had at least the cultivation base of Tao reasoning realm. With their overall strength, it was easy for them to spy on everything on Panga continent with their divine sense. That was why they had all seen the unusual change outside Mianhu city just now. After a long silence, Daoist Miao Yuan's purple-gold Daoist robe quietly tore apart, and amidst a flickering golden light, a pale golden kasaya draped over his body. The bun on his head fell off silently, revealing a big bald head. He put his palms together and bowed to Daoist's purple eyebrow, then recited the name of Buddha and sighed in a low voice. Daozu, I'm good Yuan. It's easy to explain. It's just that when Daozu were crafting the investiture of the gods, I added some ferocious soul stones into it. Sect Master Miao Yuan was the main assistant of the 9 Daozu in refining the investiture of the gods. Had it not been for his profound ability in artifact crafting, and his endless wonderful ideas, the 9 Daozu might not have been able to successfully refine the investiture of the gods. Even if the result was a defective product, it was, after all, the investiture of the gods, and it was working now, wasn't it? Green Eyebrow Daozu gritted his teeth and said, instead of being the sect master of the Tao League, you chose to be a traitor. Then, I'll let you be ordered by the Divine Lord of Universe in the future, and be the lowliest official for the rest of your life. Daoist Purple Eyebrow fixed his eyes on Sect Master Miao Yuan as well. The atmosphere in the Palace of Tao Origin became extremely strange, suffocating like a graveyard at night. After a full 2 hours, Daoist Purple Eyebrow sighed softly and said, Miao Yuan, you played a great role in refining the investiture of the gods. It's your credit that you were able to refine the investiture of the gods into what it is today, so that your master and all your uncle masters could only suppress the investiture of the gods with their souls, right? How did you do it? When the 3 revered Buddhas who had just destroyed their Dharmakaya and natal relics, exhausted all the power of their immortal souls to reverse the Vajra Amitba formation, they had used a secret art of the Tao League to send back some of the secret information they had learned. Among them were the names of several core spies of the Tao League, including Sect Master Miao Yuan. With a soft sigh, the 7 sect masters in purple robes, Chi-Chi stood up and stood in front of Daoist Miao Yuan. One of the sect masters said in a deep voice, how can a mere demon monk Gue Yuan be worthy of Daozu's personal attack? Aren't you overestimating him too much? Demon monk Gue Yuan, surrender and listen to Daozu's punishment. Daoist Purple Eyebrow laughed and nodded. Yes, my 9 brothers and I have been competing with those 7 bald thieves for countless years, and we have also placed many trusted disciples in each other's disciples. Whether it is us or the 7 bald thieves, we have done everything possible to strictly examine our first disciples, true disciples, and inner disciples. But there are always fish that slip through the net. Daoist Purple Eyebrow sighed, shook his head and said, just now, outside the city of Miaohu, the Vajra Amitba formation of the Buddhist League was broken. You have all seen it. With a long sigh, Yuan Ling flew out of Daoist Miao Yuan's body. The investiture of the gods released a strong golden light that enveloped Yuan Ling and swallowed him into the investiture of the gods. Sect Master Miao Yuan rose to his feet in confusion. He cupped his fist and bowed to Daoist Purple Eyebrow, then asked respectfully, what can I do for you, eldest uncle? Daoist Miao Yuan gave a long laugh. A bright light burst out of his body, and he was ready to self-detonate. His heart was as clear as a mirror. In front of the 9 Tao ancestors, he had no chance to escape at all, not to mention a life-and-death struggle with the other almighty figures of Tao sect. The best choice he could make now was to self-detonate, so that he would not be captured alive and suffer the humiliation for no reason. Outside the 33 heavens, in the supreme Daoyuotian realm, Daoist Miao Yuan smiled, narrowed his eyes at Daoist Purple Eyebrow, who had an unsightly expression on his face, and said, these ferocious soul stones are born in the chaos, and they are formed by the immeasurable power of fierce souls. It took the 5 Buddhist patriarchs 3 eons to find enough ferocious soul stones from the chaos. They concealed the ferocious aura within them with the power of Buddhism. then disguised them as the celestial divine gold, an essential material for crafting the investiture of the gods, and fused them into the investiture of the gods. That is why the investiture of the gods has so many strange problems. Chapter 1051. The three World Masters, the World Masters, the World Masters, and the World Masters launched their attacks simultaneously, throwing the Vajra Amitba formation into a great mess. Inside the Vajra Amitba, the enormous whirlpool of Buddha power was clean and stable. Every single bit of Buddha power was moving according to the path of the formation, without any mistake. The 9 World Masters were guarding the core of the formation, which was enough to ensure the perfect operation of the formation. However, the result of the 3 World Masters destroying their spirit relic and golden bodies, risking their lives to unleash all of their powers, was like 3 enormous piles of cow dung suddenly being dragged into a clear stream by a stampeding herd of wild buffaloes. In the stream, which was about 10 feet wide and a foot deep, 3 lumps of cow dung, the size of a rice bucket, emerged. The originally crystal clear stream was immediately polluted into a mess, and the originally clear water also became messy. Tiny streams of Buddhist power collided and rubbed against each other, and the stable and constant vortex of Buddhist power inside the Vajra Muni collapsed on the spot. Along with a shrill howl, the 6 World Masters, who had been concentrating on controlling the operation of the formation, spurted out colorful, sticky blood and spirit fire from their eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Their skins cracked inch by inch, and blood splashed all over the sky. The 36 World Masters, 36 ancient Buddhas, and countless Bodhisattvas, Vajras, and Arhats had all sent their powers into the Vajra Amitba through their bodies. Now that the formation was in a mess, 90% of the tremendous Buddha power rushed into their bodies and exploded like thunderbolts. The 6 World Masters were severely injured on the spot. They fell from the clouds, barely breathing. Except for the strongest World Master, the other 5 had all fainted. Inside the formation, countless Chi-Chi World Masters vomited blood. The counterforce of the formation was as great as a full power strike launched by them, and all of them were severely injured. After all, in the Vajra Amitba formation, none of them had the concept of self-defense. In their eyes, the formation could never be broken. All of their powers were used to maintain the operation of the formation, and none of them had the time to protect themselves. The Buddha World Masters in the Vajra Amitba formation were indestructible, but also extremely fragile. As long as the formation was fine, no one in Pangu world could hurt them. However, once there was a flaw in the grand formation, everyone would suffer the backlash of their own Buddhist power, and everyone would be heavily injured at the same time. They were beaten by their own power, until they were on the verge of death. 99% of them did not even have the strength to move their pinky. Wuxia, whose divine sense had seeped into the Vajra Muni, laughed in ecstasy. His enormous divine sense wrapped around the Vajra Muni, and his hands formed seals one after another. The Yuanling True Flame fused with his divine sense and transformed into a white divine rune that blasted into the core of the Vajra Muni. Countless seals transformed into a huge palm that enveloped the purple halo at the core of the Vajra Muni. The mystic techniques in Scroll of Stealing were marvelous. The giant hand did not disturb Vajra Muni's nascent spirit, who was shrouded in the purple halo. Instead, it pierced through the protection of the purple halo like quicksilver, piercing through the countless innate defensive runes, bringing with it the white divine runes formed from Yuanling True Flame, and his divine sense as well as Yuanling True Flame, as it came right before Vajra Muni's nascent spirit. The Vajra Muni was one of the most important treasures of the Buddhist path. It was the core treasure of the Buddhist path's Vajra Muni formation. With the Vajra Muni, there would be the Vajra Muni formation. Without this treasure, the Buddhist sect would lose the Buddhist sect's formation that was known as the #1 defensive formation in the world. Therefore, mouth-guarding Buddha had left a clone of Yuanling in the Vajra Muni formation. This clone of Yuanling had the overall strength equivalent to an almighty expert at the peak of Tao-breaking realm. As soon as the white divine runes transformed from Yuanling's true flame, and the clone of Wuxia approached Yuanling, the clone of mouth-guarding Buddha, who was sitting cross-legged above Yuanling, suddenly opened his eyes. The space inside the Vajramuni temple suddenly expanded, while the clone of Yuan Ling's true flame expanded rapidly. In front of Wuqi's clone of Wuqi, he transformed into a golden statue of Buddha with 8 heads and 6 arms, standing hundreds of feet tall, and entirely purple-green in color. Fellow Taoist, please step back. The Buddhist sect will form a good relationship with you. Yuan Ling's clone of mouth-guarding Buddha stared at the white divine runes transformed from Wuqi's clone, then solemnly chanted the name of Buddha, and made a promise. Wuqi let out a long laugh. A dense black mist rushed out of his clone, within which countless starlight swirled. The dense starlight mixed with the black mist and instantly wrapped around Yuan Ling's clone of mouth-guarding Buddha. The heaven-veiling flag of chaos was fully activated. Wuqi flew in front of Yuan Ling's clone of mouth-guarding Buddha, and imprinted the white divine runes on the forehead of the golden Buddha. Body-splitting bandit's palm imprint. Wuqi cried out. The body-splitting bandit's palm imprint, which was specially used to deal with all kinds of Yuan Ling and nascent divinity clones of mouth-guarding Buddha, transformed into layers of shockwaves with a very high frequency and smashed down. Yuan Ling's clone of mouth-guarding Buddha had just been wrapped up by the heaven-veiling flag of chaos, and before he could deal with Wuqi, the body-splitting bandit's palm imprint had severely wounded his clone of Yuan Ling. Countless tiny cracks appeared on the purple-green golden Buddha statue. Mouth-guarding Buddha roared furiously, and more than 50% of the energy essence of Yuan Ling's clone vanished abruptly. Meanwhile, Wuqi's clone of mouth-guarding Buddha had become twice as strong. Suddenly, mouth-guarding Buddha's eyes snapped open and he cried out in a hoarse voice, "Evildoer! Why you? Scroll of stealing. This is..." The heaven-veiling flag of chaos swept out in all directions, completely cutting off the connection between Yuan Ling's clone of mouth-guarding Buddha and the outside world. Wuqi let out a long laugh and said, "I'll just collect some interest. Mouth-guarding Buddha, or perhaps I should call you fellow Taoist Lao Ai. In the past, you exchanged 3 casting pills with me with some precious treasures, and with the power of my pills, you were able to get rid of your original hairy body." Yuan Ling's clone of mouth-guarding Buddha was clearly struck dumb. Scroll of stealing? Wasn't the evildoer who cultivated the scroll of stealing killed by all the celestial fiends in the universe a long, long time ago? Why did he appear again now? As for the matter of the 3 casting pills, how long ago was that? It was so long ago that mouth-guarding Buddha himself had forgotten about it. He had even placed the name of Lao Ai in the deepest part of his soul, and it had been a very long time since even his 6 like-minded senior and junior brothers mentioned the name. Who did he get those 3 caste body-shaping elixirs from? There were countless chaos fiend gods who were good at killing and arson, but there seemed to be only one who was good at alchemy. But that person should have been killed by them in the ancient sacred palace. Why was he here? Staring at Wuqi in astonishment, mouth-guarding Buddha asked hesitantly, "Fellow Taoist Yuan Ling?" Wuqi sneered. He produced the Book of Life and Death and the Soul Hooking Brush, 2 supreme treasures of primal, at the same time. The Book of Life and Death unleashed a beam of bright light, and fixed its eyes on Yuan Ling's clone, while the Soul Hooking Brush made a light hook at his body. Both the Book of Life and Death and the Soul Hooking Brush had an absolute restraining effect on all spirit bodies. Mouth-guarding Buddha let out a miserable howl, and Yuan Ling's clone, which was badly injured, was shattered into countless fist-sized purple-green liquid droplets that flew all over the sky. Wuqi opened his mouth and sucked all the liquid droplets into his mouth. This was equivalent to the full cultivation base of a peak-stage Tao-breaking expert. Wuqi felt a hot current surging through his body, and his strength instantly doubled. Yuan Ling's clone was exposed in front of Wuqi. Wuqi laughed wildly, and the white divine characters transformed from his clone smashed into Yuan Ling's clone. In the blink of an eye, he had gained preliminary control over the Diamond Muni. This Diamond Muni was a supreme treasure that mouth-guarding Buddha had refined with his heart's blood. Now that his clone had been killed by Wuqi, Wuqi had obtained all the techniques to control the Diamond Muni from his clone's memory. Complacently, he copied Yuan Ling's clone, drew a hand seal, pointed at the void and said, "Quick!" The chaotic Diamond Muni array suddenly froze. The 6 revered ones, 36 ancient Buddhas, and countless bodhisattvas, vajras, and arhats who were falling from the sky suddenly trembled. Even though Buddhist cultivators valued cultivating their minds the most, at this moment, they could not help but show a trace of panic and despair. They looked up in shock at the diamond Muni, who was shining brightly, and called out the name of Buddha in unison. The chaotic Buddhist power inside the diamond Muni slowly rotated in the opposite direction. In addition to the diamond Muni, the sky-veiling flag of origin wrapped in the boundless star power formed a starry array inside the diamond Muni. The starlight stream transformed into a huge whirlpool, which worked with the diamond Muni to mobilize the Buddhist power left in the diamond Muni by the other Buddhist cultivators. All the power rotated rapidly, and the diamond Muni turned into a huge black hole, crazily sucking in all the injured Buddhist cultivators. The huge arhat in the sky, which was on the verge of disintegration, gradually compressed and collapsed. A faint black mist spread in all directions, and the bodies of the Buddhist cultivators flew uncontrollably toward the diamond Muni. Their Buddhist power was still tangled together, and everyone's power was sucking and tearing each other apart. In their injured state, they could not resist the violent attraction of the diamond Muni. After being purified by the diamond Muni, the enormous Buddhist power was transformed into a pure energy that was injected into Wuqi's body and was smoothly absorbed by him. 6 revered Buddhas, 36 ancient Buddhas, 36 Buddhas, countless bodhisattvas, and other Buddhist cultivators, all of them had cultivated for countless eons. Even those bodhisattvas of the level of gold immortal, although their cultivation base was not worth mentioning, the magic power they possessed could be called boundless. Wuxia happily plundered all the cultivation base of these Buddhist cultivators, while the ferocious and violent Ninetails stood guard beside Wuxia, wagging its huge head. A few arhats who were slightly injured tried to attack Wuxia with their Buddhist treasures, but were knocked flying far away by the Ninetails' pincers. Gradually, the 6 revered Buddhas were sucked into the diamond Muni, while the other Buddhist cultivators were also sucked into the diamond Muni like dumplings. With a smile on his face, Wuxia stabilized the diamond Muni formation again. He reversed the direction of the formation and turned it from facing outside to facing inside. Unless those Buddhist cultivators who were sealed in the diamond Muni could break through the formation formed by all their Buddhist power in one fell swoop, they would never be able to escape. But how difficult would it be to break through the diamond Muni formation? It was something that even Buddha could not do, let alone them. The reverse diamond Muni formation slowly rotated. All the Buddhist cultivators' magic power was constantly extracted and purified, and then gradually transferred to Wuxia. Wuxia felt the magic power in his body was gradually replenished, like a starving giant who had just received an abundance of food. His body was gradually filled with strength. A fragrant breeze came from the sky. The golden mist attendant who arrived late roared angrily out of humiliation. He raised his scepter and smashed it down at Wuqi's head. Chapter 1052. Golden Mist Attendant flew into a rage and smashed down with his pestle. He was only 10 minutes late. He was one of the 7 Buddhist ancestors' personal attendants, the Golden Mist Attendant who was famous for his various divine abilities. His heavenly feet divine ability was the best in Buddhism. It only took him an hour to rush from Gradrakuta Mountain to Mianhu City. This speed was even faster than the Buddhist venerables. However, with this speed, what did he see when he arrived? He saw the diamond Muni formation reverse. Except for the 3 traders, all the Buddhist saints in the formation were sucked into the diamond Muni primordial treasure. The impenetrable defensive formation had turned into a cage, trapping all the Buddhist deities within it. This was a formation that even the Buddha ancestor could not break. In other words, unless they killed Wuxia and took back the diamond Muni formation, the 6 Buddhist venerables, 36 ancient Buddhas, and 36 Buddhas would never be able to escape. All of this was because Attendant Golden Mist had arrived 10 minutes late. As long as he was a little faster, just a little faster, as long as he threw Buddha's natal relic into the Vajra Muni formation, no one would be able to break it. How dare you, evil creature! The Golden Mist Attendant roared. He, who was famous for his divine abilities, gave up all his divine abilities and used all his divine energy to smash the pestle at Wuqi's head. He didn't want to kill Wuqi easily with divine abilities. He wanted to use the demon-subduing pestle to beat him into mincemeat inch by inch. Looking coldly at Golden Mist Attendant, Wuqi's magic power surged like the tide. With every passing second, his magic power skyrocketed. The Buddhist venerables, ancient Buddhas, and countless bodhisattvas, vajras, and arhats inside the Diamond Muni formation were howling. They were seriously injured and couldn't control their Buddhist power. The magic power they had cultivated for eons was being extracted by the reverse formation, purified by the Diamond Muni formation, and injected into Wuqi's body. Compared to Wuqi, who used thievery energy to devour heaven and earth's spiritual energy to increase his cultivation base, this kind of plundering extraction was tens of thousands of times faster than his own cultivation. At this moment, Wuqi felt as though he was omnipotent. It was as though he could tear a hole in the world with a single punch. Under the impetus of the endless pure energy, Wuqi's soul was slowly moving towards a mysterious and unpredictable realm. Vaguely, he grasped the core track of the great Tao of Pangu world, and saw something that ordinary people couldn't understand. As long as he could integrate his Yuan Ling with these mysterious and unfathomable trajectories, he would officially progress to the Tao integration stage. Especially at this moment, there were countless Buddhists providing him with Dharma power. Once he stepped into the Tao-fusing realm, his Dharma power cultivation would not be much weaker than those old monsters. At least the Dharma power cultivation that the 6 revered ones and so many ancient Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and arhats offered to Wuqi would definitely be several times stronger than that of the Wahuang clan. Chuckling coldly, Wuqi casually raised his right hand. He did not use any supreme artifact of primal, but simply raised his right hand. He did not use any dharmic powers or divine powers. With a smile on his face, he used his palms to receive the demon-subduing pestle that Golden Mist Attendant had struck at him with all his might. A loud boom rang out, and sparks flew in all directions. Wuqi's fair palm, which looked like it was carved out of jade, did not move at all. On the other hand, the attendant of Gold Mist howled miserably, waving both his arms and legs as he was knocked flying away by the tremendous counterforce. The scepter was bent 90 degrees, and countless cracks covered its body. The webs between the thumb and forefinger of the Gold Mist servant were torn, and the cracks extended from his hands to his elbows. Golden blood kept gushing out, and countless cracks could be seen on the pale golden bones in his arms as well. A few golden thunderbolts flashed rapidly in Wuqi's palm, but they only flickered for a while before vanishing without a trace. These thunderbolts came from the devil-subduing Buddhist seal personally sealed on the scepter by the Buddha himself. It had the great power to kill all evil and evil. However, the devil-subduing divine thunder unleashed from the Buddhist seal personally sealed by the Buddha did not even leave a scratch on the skin of Wuqi's palm. The Gold Mist servant stared in horror at Wuqi, who was acting as if nothing had happened, and muttered to himself, "What a tough body." Inside the withered heart cave on Mount Gridrakutta, the 7 Buddhist ancestors, Chi-Chi, who were watching the commotion with full attention, gasped. As their personal attendant, Attendant Golden Mist was one of the most powerful figures in the Buddhist League. The evil-subduing pestle in his hand was forged by the 7 Buddhist patriarchs, using innate materials collected from the chaos with their natal true flames. Its power was not weaker than any ordinary chaos spiritual artifact. Could Wuqi destroy a chaos spirit artifact with his bare palm? Even the Buddhist seal personally blessed by the Buddha had no effect on him? How strong was this guy's fleshly body? The 7 Buddhist ancestors cultivated both nature and life, and they believed their fleshly bodies were extremely strong. But they knew that if they were to fight a chaos spirit artifact head-on, they would most likely be the ones injured. Where did this freak come from? How could he bend a chaos spirit artifact's scepter with his bare palm? Wuqi looked coldly at the dumbfounded Gold Mist servant and sneered. His divine soul began to stir, and he was about to approach the indescribably mysterious and unfathomable heavenly Tao. Just as Wuqi was about to separate Yuan Ling and merge with the heavenly Tao's core, an inexplicable palpitation stopped him in his tracks. The first wisp of innate thieving energy that had merged with him pulsed gently, as if it had a different understanding of his Tao fusing. After pondering for a moment, Wuqi gave up the urge to fuse with the Tao at this time. It was not only because of the warning from the thieving energy, but also because Wuqi knew that if he fused with the Tao now, according to the agreement between the Huahuang clan and the other Tao fusing experts, he could no longer fight in this great God-conferment tribulation. Wouldn't he be giving up a great opportunity for no reason? Since the Daozu and the Buddhist ancestors could not fight, why not bully their disciples and grand-disciples for more benefits? There was still a huge gap between Wuqi and the Daozu and the Buddhist ancestors in terms of magic power and cultivation base. But if he added the magic power and cultivation base of dozens of world venerables and sect masters, as well as the cultivation base of some Buddhist League and Taoist League almighty experts, he would not be too far off. Instead of fusing with the Tao now, he might as well wait until his foundation was stronger. He smiled and nodded at attendant Jinlan. A plume of black smoke shot out from the top of Wuqi's head, and the sky-veiling flag of chaos let out a whistling sound that swept across the heaven and earth. Dozens of black whirlwinds wrapped around attendant Jinlan and pulled him toward the Vajramuni, who hovered above Wuqi's head and glowed brightly. Attendant Jinlan was indeed a powerful figure famous for his various divine powers in the Buddhist League. When he was pulled by the sky-veiling flag of chaos, his body turned into thousands of golden beams and a large cloud of fragrant smoke that scattered in all directions. He had actually broken through the sky-veiling flag of chaos and escaped into the void. Good. Wuqi gave a loud laugh, then casually pointed the soul-hooking brush at the void. The attendant gave a muffled snort as the myriad of beams of golden light once again gathered together. His eyes were spinning as he fell to the ground. The Book of Life and Death and the soul-hooking brush were specialized in attacking all kinds of spirit bodies. Attendant Jinlan's soul was nearly blown out of his body by the soul-hooking brush. At the moment, he could only barely stabilize his mind to prevent his soul from being taken away. How could he have the strength to resist Wuqi? With a flick of the sky-veiling flag of chaos, attendant Jinlan drifted into the Vajramuni. At the same time, his profound cultivation base was drawn out by the reverse formation, flying into Wuqi's body and becoming a part of Wuqi's mighty primal purple energy. A furious bellow rang out from Mount Gradrakuda's withered heart cave. Immediately after that, countless auspicious clouds rose from all over the mountain. Countless pagodas, lotus flowers, Bodhi trees, forests of 7 treasures, and many other auspicious objects of the Buddhist League flew all over the sky, protecting the vast army of Buddhist League as they hurried toward Penghu continent. The 7 Buddhist ancestors were truly infuriated. They were truly enraged. For a long time, Wuqi, the king of East Sea of Du, was just a nobody in their eyes, and they never thought that Wuqi was qualified to participate in the godhood conferment. But Wuqi had shattered attendant Jinlan's staff with a palm strike, and he had also shown that he had 4 supreme treasures of primal: the sky-veiling flag of chaos, the Vajramuni, the Book of Life and Death, and the soul-hooking brush. With such prowess and wealth, he was strong enough to stir up trouble. The 7 Buddhist patriarchs felt that they had misjudged him, and their anger was even more infuriating than when attendant Jinlan was forcibly taken away by Wuqi. On top of that, all the schemes of the Buddhist League in Mianhu City had come to nothing. In their anger, they simply sent out the army of the Buddhist League to fight recklessly. In the face of absolute power, all the schemes were nothing. The 7 Buddhist patriarchs thought that after so many years of keeping a low profile and accumulating strength, the Buddhist League was now strong enough to do something. 300,000 miles west of Mianhu City, after Wuqi took attendant Jinlan into the Vajramuni, Yingzheng and the other 5 saint emperors burst into laughter. Nearly 1,000 supreme towers unleashed dark evil energy and Yin flame at the same time, protecting the reinforcements as they rushed toward Mianhu City. Wei Wuji, the violent man, even snapped from the cloud. Daoist Tianji, Daoist Wuyo, and that little godly show. If you dare to touch a finger of King Wei Shan, I swear I'll wipe out your descendants, slaughter your entire clan, and wipe out all the living beings in the world who are related to you. The deafening roar shook the earth and shook the mountains near and far. Presumably, Daoist Tianji and his companions in Mianhu City, as well as Gao, must have heard the roar as well. Wuqi, too, flew up to Ninetail's back, waved the pole of sky-veiling flag of chaos, and smashed it hard at the beast's head. Ninetails threw his head back and roared, then flew toward Mianhu City, shaking his head and wagging his tail. Behind Wuqi were countless reinforcements of Diyu, escorted by nearly 1,000 supreme towers. Among these reinforcements were not only the newly formed Flying Bear Army from Liangzhu, but also the Celestial Army under the command of the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan and the Yen Emperor Shenong. The army galloped forward. When they were less than 100 miles away from Mianhu City, a distance that Wuqi and his companions could cover with just a twist of their bodies, a bright light suddenly shone in the sky, and a vast mist rose into the air. Countless Taoists, feather warriors, Chuanjin cultivators, and hermits, clad in robes of different lengths, colorful crane cloaks, and all kinds of strange ornaments and treasures, stood in front of Wuqi and his companions with a smile on their faces. A long cry rang out as a middle-aged Taoist, clad in a moon-white Taoist robe and a black crane cloak, flew forward on a cloud, his body shrouded in a layer of watery light, and the top of his head releasing specks of golden light that turned into countless golden lotuses and drifted in all directions. Then he cupped his fist and bowed to Wuqi and his companions. "Benefactors, please turn back. You are not allowed to go to Mianhu City." Chapter 1053. Upon hearing Taoist Mingying's words, Yen Revered no longer bothered to save his face. With a wave of his hand, the few revered ones behind him, as well as the many ancient Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, spread their palms open at the same time. Lotus flowers bloomed in their palms, and within each lotus was a Buddhist kingdom. Countless fully armed Buddhist armies, such as Vajras, strongmen, heavenly kings, and Jidis, marched out in neat rows, quickly forming a battle formation in the surroundings. "Holy Mother Empress Hua, do you think what I'm doing will work?" Taoist Mingying was taken aback by Wuqi's brazen attack. He had never seen someone like Wuqi before. Both Buddhist League and Tao League paid particular attention to the relationship of karma and retribution. Ao Buzan had offended Taoist Mingying, and as the master of Ao Buzan, Wuqi should pick up the karma and step aside obediently today, instead of making things difficult for Taoist Mingying. But Wuqi actually attacked him? How could he be so unreasonable? The leader of the group was a 36 feet tall revered ones of the Buddhist League. He did not even spare a glance at Wuqi. Instead, he gave Taoist Mingying a sidelong glance and said with a cold grin, "Taoist Mingying, I don't want to ruin the harmony between our two clans. Step aside. His Majesty Emperor Wugo of Shizo Dynasty wants to return to the capital city of Shizo Dynasty through Mianhu City." Wuqi patted the nine tails beneath him and said cunningly, "My mount is this nine-tailed scorpion, and as for Ao Buzan, ha ha ha, he has something to do with the East Sea." The bronze dagger axe changed its target and locked onto the revered one's chest. Grinning coldly, Taoist Mingying said, "There are thousands of great Taoists in the world, and any one of them can lead you back to Calmheart City. But today this Mianhu City belongs to Tao League." Every prime disciple had a cultivation base of at least the first tier of Tao breaking realm, and some like Taoist Chicheng had an excellent innate talent, and almost had one of his feet stepped into the realm of Tao fusing. That was why the Taoist in front of him gave Wuqi such a strong sense of threat. He really had the ability to threaten Wuqi's life. With Taoist Mingying standing in their way, they could not even spare Wuqi and his companions, let alone the many holy saints of Buddhist League who were approaching menacingly with a murderous aura. "Great! Let's have a fight between your two clans. Which clan survives in the end? Apart from Gao, everyone else in Yuxiong army belongs to that clan." Taking a deep breath, Wuqi cupped his hands towards the Taoist and asked, "May I know your name?" Wuqi smiled. Clearly, he had seized the opportunity when the three revered ones were stirring up trouble to reverse the Vajra Muni formation, subduing countless Buddhist saints in one fell swoop. This move had deterred the almighty experts of Tao League, led by Taoist Mingying. That was why they seized the opportunity of what Ao Buzan had done in the past to trap Wuqi, telling him to ignore what was happening here. At this critical juncture, a fragrant breeze lingered in the sky, and auspicious mists rose into the air. Escorted by countless celestial fiends from outer domains, Countless holy saints of Buddhist League were flying whistling through the air. Amidst these holy saints of Buddhist League was the emperor of the Shizo dynasty, Emperor Wugo. These holy saints of Buddhist League, who usually wore kind and benevolent countenances, had turned into ferocious fiends today. How could they not be angry when the Vajramuni formation was destroyed and the Vajramuni temple was taken away? For a moment, the atmosphere was extremely stiff. The tough attitude of the Buddhist League was beyond everyone's expectation, and Taoist Minging did not know how to deal with it. Even though Wuxia had made great progress in his cultivation base, he instinctively felt threatened when facing this Taoist who was clad in a white Taoist robe and a black crane cloak. I reckon this Taoist is the first disciple of some Daozu, right? Wuxia knew the rules of the Tao League. The so-called first disciple was actually equivalent to the elders of technique imparting an ordinary immortal sex, and this was the kind of person who passed on his or her skills on behalf of his or her master. Taoist Minging twitched his lips and quickly changed the topic. King of East Sea, is Ao Buzan the king of East Sea's mount? Taoist Minging smiled. He gave the 6 saint emperors standing behind Wuxia a glance, then nodded and said, "In that case, we really need to discuss this matter with the king of East Sea. Ao Buzan has abducted the mounts of me and the other fellow Taoists, and this karma has to fall on the king of East Sea. Either the king of East Sea returns our mounts, or the king of East Sea can turn around and head eastward, and leave this matter alone." The white-clothed Taoist smiled faintly. He gave Wuxia a glance, then nodded and said, "I'm Taoist Minging from Mount Wujin. I've long heard of the reputation of the king of East Sea, and now that I've met you today, you are indeed better than the reputation. The Vajramuni formation of the Buddhist League was single-handedly destroyed by the king of East Sea." Taoist Minging remained silent. Wisps of immortal light kept flashing on his palm, which was gripping the bronze dagger axe. Obviously, he was injecting all his immortal energy into it. He stared coldly at Wuxia, while 3 sharp tips of the dagger axe kept emitting a cold green gleam, making his brows and beard turn green. Sure enough, one's overall strength decided everything. If not for Wuqia's trick just now, how could these almighty experts of the Tao League negotiate with him so calmly? It was as deep as the ocean, unfathomable. All of a sudden, Wuxia burst into laughter. He clapped his hands and said, "Excellent. 6 saint emperors, let's have a fight. Whoever survives in the end, apart from Gao, will have all the soldiers of Yuxiong army belong to the winner. What do you say?" Hundreds of grains of sand were shattered by the heaven-pacifying sword. A sword beam flashed, and in a hurry, Taoist Minging tilted his body to one side, allowing the sword beam to brush past his body. Suddenly, the black crane cloak he was wearing disintegrated, and countless black crane feathers rushed out in all directions, forming into a huge taiji diagram in front of him. The sword light swept across the 8 trigrams pattern formed by the feathers. Thousands of crane feathers were cut off by the sword light, slowly falling to the ground. When these almighty experts of the Buddhist League cast aside all their scruples and exposed the military force they had accumulated over the years, the 6 saint emperors' faces flickered. As far as their eyes could see, the sky was filled with soldiers summoned from the Buddhist kingdoms by the almighty experts of the Buddhist League. Even the weakest bodhisattva of the Buddhist League could gather 800 Buddhist kingdoms, and each Buddhist kingdom had at least 100 million believers. As long as 1 in a million of these believers could be converted into a Buddhist League army, one could imagine how large an army these Buddhist League almighty beings could gather once they let loose. About the time of 3 breaths, Wahuang clan's soft voice was heard coming from the void. The blood centipede sword flashed across the sky, slicing dozens of grains of sand in half. But these grains of sand were frighteningly heavy and extremely tough. After slicing through dozens of them, the sword's light dimmed abruptly, and hundreds of grains of sand came smashing at it at high speed, causing clanging noises to ring out of the sword and shooting out beams of flame. At the same time, Wuxia laughed aloud and said, "That was Ao Buzan's doing. What does it have to do with me? If Taoist Minging is dissatisfied with him, you can capture him alive and skin him alive. Don't blame the karma he caused on me." Wuxia shook his head hastily and said, "Don't talk nonsense, Taoist Minging. It was clearly the few Daozu who broke the Vajramuni formation, and it has nothing to do with me. I just took advantage of the situation, and the culprit is still your Dao League. Whoever pooped the shit should clean it up himself. Don't put the shit on others. How dare you? Taoist Mingying suffered a great loss. His immortal body was nearly sliced into two by the heaven-pacifying sword. If not for the fact that his crane cloak was also a rare treasure, perhaps he would have been killed by Wuxia. Flying into a rage out of humiliation, Taoist Mingying pulled out a pale green bronze dagger axe from under his sleeve. He weighed it in his right hand, then pointed the 6-feet-long dagger axe at Wuxia. He snorted coldly and unleashed a large sheet of dark mist from the sky-veiling flag of chaos to cover his body, while the Vajramuni sprayed out a yellow bell-shaped light barrier that wrapped around Wuxia. Wuxia smiled at Taoist Mingying and said, "This treasure seems to be pretty good, but can it really break the Vajramuni formation? Although I can only borrow 70% of its power through the Vajramuni, do you think you can break it?" In the entire Dao League, there were only 27 prime disciples among the 9 Daozu, while there were several hundred true disciples. Apart from Taoist Chicheng, who was planted by the Wahuang clan, the other 26 prime disciples had a very high status in the Dao League, and all the other true disciples addressed them as Shifu. The almighty experts from both Dao League and Buddhist League were taken aback, and then they heard Wuxia throw his head back and cry out loud. With the Book of Life and Death in his left hand and the soul-hooking brush in his right, Wuxia clenched his jaws and injected all his power into the 2 supreme treasures. 2 subtle auras locked onto Taoist Mingying's immortal soul. Once Wuxia activated the 2 treasures, he would be able to launch a deadly attack on Taoist Mingying's immortal soul. While shouting, Taoist Mingying sprayed out a clump of dense purple mist. A faint and refreshing purple mist pervaded the air, covering an area of several tens of acres in circumference. Inside of it, countless thumb-sized, translucent bluish-purple grains of sand could be seen flying in all directions. Each grain of sand weighed as much as a star, and when they flew in the air, they produced loud, muffled noises that sounded like thunderclaps. Occasionally, when a few grains of sand collided with each other, a deafening boom would immediately erupt and sparks would splash in all directions. Waving his hand, Wuxia called back the heaven-pacifying sword, then looked at Taoist Mingying and sneered. "Since you want to risk your life, I'll do it." Gao was in Mianhu City, and Wuxia would never let someone he considered as a friend be bullied and killed like this. Wuqi's expression flickered. The bronze dagger axe looked inconspicuous, but the energy aura it emanated was extremely fierce, as if it contained an aura that could tear and destroy everything. Even with Wuqi's eyesight, he could not see through the origin of this bronze dagger axe. Perhaps, it was an extraordinary artifact bred in the chaos, and possessed a lethality beyond Wuqi's expectation. "King of East Sea, this sword strike of yours has sown enmity between you and me. Don't blame me for whatever karma you face in the future," cried Taoist Mingying angrily. Almost all of them had inherited the complete cultivation technique of a certain Daozu, and would selectively teach a part of it to those true disciples with suitable aptitudes. For example, a certain true disciple would be suitable to cultivate the Thunder Immortal technique, while some would be suitable to cultivate the Ice Immortal technique, some would be suitable to refine flying swords to kill and set fires, and some would be suitable to concoct pills to save lives and cure illnesses. But Wuxia was not a man who could be so easily limited by the so-called karma. Upon hearing Taoist Mingying's words, he wasted no time and spat out the blood centipede sword, an innate spirit artifact condensed from the primal purple energy. Then it slashed down towards Taoist Mingying's head amidst a foot-thick blood-red beam of light. In his previous life, the heaven-pacifying sword, a chaotic spirit treasure crafted by Wuxia, had shrunk to the size of a finger, and was thrust out amidst the blood-red beam of light. Clang! The blood centipede sword was shattered by the sandstorm, exploding into a clump of faint primal purple energy that drifted and drifted in all directions. Wuxia opened his mouth and inhaled, sucking the primal purple energy back into his mouth. He let out a soft cry and breathed out a mouthful of prime energy. Abruptly, the heaven-pacifying sword returned to its original form, then thrust towards Taoist Mingying with a dim and inconspicuous sword beam. Chapter 1054. The three parties met in Mianhu City and fought fiercely for the sake of Yuxiong army. The Yu was in a precarious situation, and the Shizo dynasty was aggressive. On the contrary, Great Wu, which was located in the southern region, was quiet and peaceful at the moment, like a paradise. Taking advantage of the war between the Yu, the Shizo dynasty, and the fallen Ling dynasty, Great Wu had stealthily occupied many territories and acquired countless people. Now Great Wu's territory was about 30% of Diyu's. Although its overall national strength was far inferior to Diyu's, in terms of military strength alone, Great Wu's military strength was impressive. In particular, Reverend Shojua had used his mighty divine ability to move countless mountains from all over Pangu continent to surround Great Wu's territory. He had even spent a great deal of magic power to deploy countless defensive formations and other defensive mechanisms on these mountains, leaving only one road leading to the north. The passage was tens of miles wide and about 10,000 miles long, with nearly 100 checkpoints of various sizes densely packed in the winding passage. The whole of Great Wu had been turned into a curled-up hedgehog by Reverend Shojua, making it impossible for anyone to find where to start. Moreover, Giguzi had deployed the art of Chimanduanjia everywhere, and MOD had led countless disciples of Mo sect to build powerful war puppets. Although Great Wu had been quietly developing in the southern region, once its strength exploded, it was enough to cause a great disturbance on Pangu continent. Just as Wuxia was provoking the Buddhist League and the Tao League to fight, a small army appeared outside Great Wu's northernmost military town, the Uncontending City. Uncontending City was the name given by Reverend Shojua, the current Great Wu's Grand Celestial Master. It represented that Great Wu had no intention of fighting with other powers, and only wanted to live quietly in a corner. However, there were millions of soldiers stationed in the city, and no less than 100,000 war puppets of various colors. Only Reverend Shojua himself knew whether the name, Uncontending, was worthy of its name. Liu Bang, clad in a long black robe, stood in front of the city gate that was thousands of feet tall and smiled. Proud of his success, he waved his hand and said lightly, "Go and ask them to open the gate. Tell them I'm here to visit Wu Tianming, the Emperor of Great Wu, at the order of the Celestial Emperor." Standing next to Liu Bang were his confidants, Zhang Liang, Xiao He, Han Xian, and Fan Kuai, and behind them were the famous 28 Celestial Lords of the Celestial Court. There were 84,000 Celestial Lords of the universe, and these 28 Celestial Lords ranked among the top among them. Their actual combat strength was also in the top 100, and their cultivation base had reached the level of Gold Immortal. Once they used their natal star power to strengthen themselves, their strength was enough to fight against Tao-breaking experts. Zhang Liang arrived at Wuzheng City in a blur and announced Liu Bang's name and the purpose of his visit. The general on the wall immediately sent the news back to Great Wu's imperial capital. In just 10 minutes, the sound of cannons could be heard coming from inside the city. The gate of Wuzheng City was thrown open, and a column of soldiers in bright armor and full of vigor marched out, forming 2 rows in front of the gate like Chi-Chi. 12 beautiful girls slowly pushed a roll of red felt out of the city gate. The scarlet cashmere felt stretched all the way to Liu Bang's feet from the city gate. Looking through the open triple gate, one could see a column of soldiers standing solemnly along the street, and the scarlet cashmere felt stretched all the way from the gate to the depths of the city. A general in full armor, even his face covered by a ferocious bronze mask, walked slowly out of Wuzheng City. He cupped his fist and bowed to Liu Bang, then cried out in a deep voice, "Please enter the city, King of Han. I've prepared a chariot and guards to escort King of Han all the way to the imperial capital to meet His Majesty." The general's aura was strange. He seemed to have practiced some superficial divine abilities and magic, but there was not much energy fluctuation in his body. He was tall and gave off a strong aura of flesh and blood. Clearly, he was practicing a body tempering technique. The strange thing was that the cultivation technique he practiced seemed to have the aura of the human race's true body of heaven and earth scripture, but also had a strong demon aura. All in all, the general's aura made people uneasy, and it made it impossible to figure out his background. The only thing they could be sure of was that this man's cultivation base was not weak. Whether he was practicing a body tempering technique or an ordinary magic or divine ability, He was probably at the same level as a primordial immortal. Although he was only the weakest primordial immortal who had just stepped into the realm of primordial, it was still frightening. A mere Great Wu was not a target that the Tao League and Buddhist League could cultivate with all their might. Yet, there was a primordial immortal among the generals guarding the first military town. Who exactly was supporting Great Wu? Sensing the mysterious aura of the general, Fan Kuai took a step sideways without batting an eyelid, and stood in front of Liu Bang. Noticing Fan Kuai's action, the general could not help but laugh strangely. I've heard a lot about King of Han. Why are you so timid? Hee. I've been ordered to invite you to the imperial capital to meet His Majesty. Do you think I'll harm you? You people are so damn paranoid. If I really wanted to harm you, I would have given the order to round you up and chop you up. Impatiently, he lifted the ferocious bronze mask on his face, revealing a furry, pale green wolf face. The general, who stood over 10 feet tall and emanated a strange and powerful aura, was a wolf demon. With his cultivation base, he could transform into a human, but he still retained the appearance of a wild wolf. At this moment, he was baring his teeth and grinning at Liu Bang, with saliva dripping from between his teeth, which made him look very frightening. Not to mention Liu Bang, even Fan Kuai and Han Xian were shocked. They hurriedly shielded Liu Bang behind them, their faces extremely unsightly. Strange laughter rang out from the top of the wall as a few Great Wu generals, also clad in full armor and bronze masks, lifted their masks at the same time, revealing the furry, ferocious faces of wild beasts. There were wild boars, hyenas, sheep, marmosets, and 8 generals, all of whom were demons. The dozen generals beside them, who were also laughing, also took off their masks. These generals looked like ordinary mortals, but when they saw them putting their arms around the fairy general's shoulders, Liu Bang and the others could not help but be stunned. How could demons and humans get along so well in Great Wu? Taking a deep breath, he pushed aside Fan Kuai and Han Xian, who were standing in front of him, then cupped his fist and bowed to the wolf demon with a smile. I've made a fool of myself. I never thought Great Wu would be like this. Well, may I ask what your position is in Wuzhou City? The wolf demon licked his nose, held his head high, and said with a cold grin, I'm Lang Qingfeng, and I'm the Lord Commander of Wuzhou City. I'm in charge of all the military towns and checkpoints within 1,000 miles of the city. Don't talk nonsense, King of Han. You're a guest who came to visit, and it's not appropriate for a guest to keep His Majesty waiting. Liu Bang nodded with a smile. With a hint of surprise that he could not hide, he led his entourage into Wuzhou City. A chariot pulled by 9 black dragons was already waiting in the city. Liu Bang boarded the chariot, surrounded by 3,000 guards and soldiers, and the procession headed for Great Wu's capital in a mighty procession. Liu Bang was overjoyed. He did not expect that humans and demons could get along so well in Great Wu. It was a pleasant surprise. If the wisdom of the human race and the formidable combat prowess of the demon race could be combined into one, the power would be extremely terrifying. For example, if Great Yu could be friendly to the demons in its territory, Great Yu's national strength would be more than doubled. Sitting in the chariot, Liu Bang murmured to himself in a low voice, if I can persuade Great Wu's emperor to cooperate with me in my great plan, then great things can be achieved. Han Xian smiled coldly and said in a low voice, Wu Tianming has to agree whether he wants to or not. Since Daozu has appointed His Majesty to replace Zhang Tingyun as the future human emperor, then he, Wu Tianming, has to obediently offer Great Wu to His Majesty. Otherwise, Liu Bang turned his head to look at the 28 celestial lords of the constellations, who were standing near the chariot and looking curiously at the scenery in Great Wu's territory. A smug smile came over his face. If Wu Tianming did not agree to his request, then he would simply kill him. How delightful it was to kill him, seize his foundation, and use Great Wu's national strength to achieve great things. As for Great Wu, it was said that a very powerful Reverend Shozhua was their grand celestial master. But so what? He was at most an itinerant cultivator of the Tao-breaking realm. Would he dare to fight against the will of the entire Tao League? When he met Reverend Shozhua, he would have to carefully distinguish which school of immortal magic he cultivated. All the immortal magic in the world came from the sect masters of the Tao League, and when the time came, he would directly ask the ancestral master of his lineage to come forward. Would Reverend Shoujua dare to betray his ancestral master? If Wu Tianming cooperated with him and offered Great Wu's land, people, and army for him to command, then when the great thing was done, he would be conferred a good divine title. Great Wu was just a small, unknown kingdom in outer heavenly realms. As for his emperor, it would be a good deal for him to be conferred the title of General Land, or General Mountain God of Penghu Continent, right? While Liu Bang was scheming, in the imperial palace of Great Wu's capital, a lobbyist was persuading Wu Tianming and Reverend Shoujua, Giguzi, and MOD, who were sitting next to him. Wu Tianming, who had had too much fun with the imperial concubines last night, yawned on the throne, while Reverend Shoujua sat motionless on the hassock like a clay sculpture. Giguzi's mind was wandering, and he was gesticulating in the air with a finger. MOD, on the other hand, tilted his head and looked out of the great hall, his deep, unfocused eyes looking somewhere. The lobbyist standing in the middle of the great hall, clad in a pale golden monk's robe and a red kasaya, was telling Wu Tianming and the others about the benefits they could get if Great Wu merged with the Shizo dynasty and cooperated with the Shizo dynasty to completely defeat Du. The monk, who had a fair, square face and looked trustworthy, promised Wu Tianming that once the Shizo dynasty replaced Du and Emperor Wugo became the human emperor, Wu Tianming would be one of the new sacred emperors of the human race, and he would be able to achieve the supreme great Tao with virtue. As for Great Wu's Grand Celestial Master, Reverend Shoujua, and the two imperial advisors, Giguzi and MOD, all of them could become Buddhas. The few Buddhist patriarchs could even pass on their mantle, so that the three celestial masters and the imperial advisors would have the opportunity to fuse with the Tao. Just as the monk was talking extravagantly, Liu Bang's convoy arrived. The sound of footsteps rang out as a few eunuchs led Liu Bang and his company into the great hall and bumped into the monk. Chapter 1055. When the monk saw the smiling face of Liu Bang, his fair and square face darkened instantly. When Liu Bang, who was beaming with joy, saw the monk in the hall, his face turned extremely unsightly, as if he had just put on a pair of expensive new shoes and stepped on a pile of stinky dog poop. His palms twitched, and Liu Bang's fingers curled into chicken claws. His lips twitched, and he managed to control himself from ordering the 28 celestial lords behind him to chop the monk into pieces. They stared at each other for a full 10 minutes, then the monk slowly put his palms together, bowed and said, "His Majesty, the King of Han." "No, he is now the King of Han. I never thought that after the death of Zhang Tingyun, Your Majesty would be the one who gained the greatest benefit." Liu Bang grinned at the monk, tilted his head, and said with a cold grin, "Master Fragrant Zen, you Buddhist League are very well informed. It hasn't been a long time since Daozu appointed me as the new emperor of the human race, and you've already found out about it? It looks like there are still remnants of Buddhist League in the Tao League." Xiang Chan gave a hollow laugh and said, "You too." They stared at each other again like two fighting cocks. Finally, Liu Bang strode to the center of the hall and nodded at Wu Tianming, who was sitting on the throne at the head of the hall. Wu Tianming, whose eyes were bloodshot and swollen like a goldfish's, yawned and waved his hand lazily. "Forget it, you're a guest from afar, don't stand on ceremony." "Oh, I'm tired. Grand Celestial Master, Imperial Advisors, I'll leave the decision to the three of you first, and then I'll make the final decision." Bowing slightly to Liu Bang, Wu Tianming moved his buttocks, and smilingly grabbed the arm of a pretty little palace maid standing next to him. Then he walked into the back hall, surrounded by a large group of palace maids and eunuchs. He left without any hesitation, but both Liu Bang and Xiang Chan were dumbfounded. The master had left, leaving behind Guru Shoujua, Giguzi, and MOD. What was going on? Liu Bang glanced at esteemed Shoujua. There was a picture of esteemed Shoujua's true image in the intelligence of Taoism, so he recognized him. Giguzi and MOD, on the other hand, had their appearances and auras altered by Wuqi with a mystic art in the scroll of stealing. So Liu Bang did not recognize these two imperial advisors as the two grandmasters he knew. He gave Giguzi and MOD a disapproving look, and cleared his throat lightly. Giguzi and Mod sat cross-legged on a cushion and closed their eyes, then began to snore. Mod yawned, lazily pulled out a lump of alloy from his sleeve, and began carving with a small carving knife. He wielded his saber like the wind, and bits of metal fragments fell down continuously. Soon, the metal lump revealed the embryonic form of a complicated gear set. Wu Tianming walked to the back of the hall with the little palace made in his arms. A purple light curtain enveloped Wu Tianming and the others. Wu Tianming, who had been dispirited and behaving like a fatuous ruler, immediately perked up. He smilingly picked up the little palace made beside him and said proudly, "Let the imperial preceptor and the others take a piece of the fat meat that has been delivered to our doorstep. Beauty, accompany His Majesty to practice the 108 styles of Xianyuan. TSK, this is a supreme secret method of the immortal path that can be mastered quickly." In the great hall, Reverend Shoujua slowly opened his eyes. He shook his head and asked in a deep voice, "Has His Majesty left?" Gue Guzi was still snoring, and Mod was still carving the gears. Lu Bang and Fragrant Zen nodded at the same time with an awful look on their faces. Shoujua slowly put his hands in his sleeves. His body floated up like a feather and slowly landed in front of Wu Tianming's throne. Looking down at Lu Bang and Fragrant Zen, Reverend Shoujua suddenly grinned and said, "Honorable guests are here. This is great news." Lu Bang and Fragrant Zen's hearts trembled. It would have been better if Reverend Shoujua had not smiled, but when he did, he looked like a hungry wolf who had seen a lamb, or a pervert who had seen a beautiful girl. His eyes were glowing with a green light, and his white teeth gleamed with a dazzling light. It was a look of desire and impatience. Looking at the weird smile on Lord Shoujua's face, Lu Bang and Fragrant Zen had a bad feeling at the same time. But when they thought about the current situation on Panga continent, and some of the future plans and strategies that Tao League and Buddhist League had made, they gritted their teeth and took a few steps forward. Before Lu Bang could speak, Fragrant Zen smiled at Reverend Shoujua and said, "Fellow Taoist Shoujua, if you can make the decision to merge Great Wu with the Shizo dynasty, the future of the Great Tao will be bright." Lu Bang did not even look at Fragrant Zen. Instead, he smiled at Reverend Shoujua and said, "Fellow Taoist Shoujua, if I'm not mistaken, you are cultivating the immortal magic of the Tao League. If you were to change your appearance and join the Buddhist sect, wouldn't your countless years of hard work and cultivation go to waste? Even if that Buddha is willing to cultivate you, how many years will it take for you to achieve your current cultivation base?" Fragrant Zen turned immediately and snapped at Lu Bang. "If your Majesty does not understand the subtlety of the Buddhist League, please don't talk nonsense. With your cultivation base, as long as you merge Great Wu with the Shizo dynasty, you will surely win the favor of Buddha. With Buddha's supreme divine ability and the infinite mysteries of the seven treasures Golden Lotus, you will surely be able to transform all your cultivation base into the power of the Buddhist League, and you can easily claim the title of Revered One." Lu Bang sneered. He raised a finger and said to Reverend Shoujua, "If Great Wu listens to Lu Bang's orders, you will have a chance to become a celestial emperor in the future." Reverend Shoujua laughed. He pointed at Giguzi and Mod and said, "I'm not the only one who can decide Great Wu's future." Lu Bang immediately puffed out his chest and promised, "That's great. When Lu Bang becomes the human emperor, the celestial emperor of the celestial court will be replaced. Senior Shoujua can be the celestial emperor of the middle extremity of the celestial court, ruling over the stars in the universe. The two imperial advisors can choose at will from the four celestial emperors of the north, south, east, and west. If you have any disciples or disciples close to you, they will surely hold a high position in the celestial court." Incense Chan grew anxious. "You must not believe what Lu Bang said, fellow Taoists. You don't know that Lu Bang has the most notorious reputation in the mortal world, and he has done all kinds of things to burn bridges after crossing the river. He even did something like sharing a piece of the pie with the father of his reincarnated body in the mortal world. Cooperating with him is no different from asking a tiger for its skin." Not allowing Lu Bang to argue, Incense Chan swore to tell them the glorious deeds of sharing a piece of the pie. Lu Bang's face turned blue as he listened, and he rolled up his sleeves, ready to fight Incense Chan to the death. When Lu Bang's scars were exposed, Han Xian, Fan Kuai, and the others were about to rush forward and beat Incense Chan. But the monk was not to be outdone. He whistled, and suddenly dozens of golden specks flew out of his sleeve. When they landed on the ground, they transformed into dozens of Buddhas, each covered in jewels and wreathed in lotus flowers. Apparently, they were the almighty experts of the Buddhist League, and they had been hiding in Incense Chan's sleeve all this time. Both sides were at daggers drawn, and just as a fight was about to break out, Reverend Shoujua suddenly coughed again. As soon as he did, both Lu Bang and Incense Chan burst out laughing. They put away the murderous intent in their hearts and looked at Reverend Shoujua with a smile. The two of them made promises one after another, promising esteemed Shoujua numerous benefits. Clearing his throat, Reverend Shoujua licked his lips and said coolly, "There's no need for you to fight. What you said about the great Tao and the position of Celestial Emperor are all lies. When things are done in the future, if you really want to burn the bridge after crossing the river, hee, what can the three of us do to you?" Shaking his head gently, Reverend Shoujua said in a deep voice, "Be straightforward and bring out real money. Innate spirit artifacts are not bad, chaotic spirit treasures are the best, and I won't turn my back on supreme treasures of primordial. Just bring out some real benefits." Stamping his foot, he said with a smile, "Great Wu is a whore, and you two are the patrons. As the saying goes, the highest bidder wins. Do you understand?" Reverend Shoujua's smile was very strange, and he did not conceal it at all. Incense Chan and Lu Bang looked at him in astonishment. Suddenly, both of them smiled with wild joy, nodded at the same time, and said, "We understand. We understand." Reverend Shoujua nodded with satisfaction. Shaking his head, he said, "Then His Majesty King of Han will make an offer first." Laughing complacently, Reverend Shoujua said, "The Jin dynasty is very powerful now. Even if Great Wu merges with it, it will only be the icing on the cake. I'm afraid it won't fetch a good price. But His Majesty King of Han is different. The Ling dynasty is gone, and now the Tao League has no power to compete for the throne of the human emperor. So Great Wu is worth a lot of money." Suddenly, Gigazi perked up. He opened his eyes and stopped snoring. Instead he smiled and said, "Senior Shoujua is right. It's true that the Tao League is very powerful, but you can't use the power of the Tao League's immortals to compete for the throne. Can you? You have to rely on manpower to compete for the throne, so that the world can be convinced. Your Majesty, there is no better choice than Great Wu under the heavens." Mod waved the carving knife in his hand and said in a low voice, "Real money. Real money. Real money. Don't try to fool us with empty words. Do you think we are those greenhorns who have never seen the world?" Lu Bang quickly glanced at Monk Xiang Chan, whose eyes were darting back and forth. He pondered for a moment, then looked up at the sky for a while a subtle divine sense quickly came into contact with Lu Bang. With his keen eyes, Reverend Shoujua saw a faint flash of rainbow light in the void, and then an exquisite ring of 7 treasures appeared on Lu Bang's finger. He knew that the almighty experts behind Lu Bang had agreed to his request. The highest bidder wins. Reverend Shoujua smiled happily. Lu Bang took a deep breath and wiped his finger with his palm. A strange light burst out of it. It was a green calabash about the size of a fist, with a faint rumble of wind and thunder coming out of it. Violent waves of energy whistled out of it, nearly collapsing the great hall into the sky. "It's a chaotic spirit treasure, Tempest Gourd," Lu Bang said in a deep voice. "It contains the innate wind and thunder energy, which can unleash an infinite amount of wind, fire, and thunder. It can also suck people into it and turn them into dust in a short time. Even a primordial immortal would not be spared." As soon as the Tempest Gourd appeared, Monk Xiang Chan burst out laughing. Amidst his laughter, Monk Xiang Chan casually took out 3 dazzling spiritual items. "Your Majesty King of Han, you're so stingy. You want to trade Great Wu with just 1 chaotic spirit treasure? Please take a look, fellow Taoists. These 3 secret treasures are the treasures of the Buddhist League's secret vault." Reverend Shoujua's smile grew even brighter. Chapter 1056. It's you. It's you. Taoist Ming-Ying and the World Venerables cried out in unison. Chu Ping waved his hand. Thousands of gusts of chilly wind and dark mist sprayed out from his sleeve, in which countless ghosts and deities rushed out whistling and plunging straight into Mianhu City. Along the way, none of the countless Buddhists and immortals from Dao League tried to stop them. They just watched helplessly as the gusts of chilly wind and dark mist rushed into the city. Before long, a pitch-black whirlwind rolled out of the city, bringing out Gao, who was covered in wounds, and nearly 10,000 imperial captains of Yuxiong army, all of them dizzy and disoriented as they were brought before Chu Ping. The World Venerables, who had their golden bodies wounded, cried out in anger. Damn you! Are you really provoked by someone? Are you trying to start a war between Buddhists and Taoists for the sake of Yuxiong army? About 100 miles west of Mianhu City, Wuxia, riding on the back of Nine-Tailed, suddenly laughed. When the army of the human race had gone far away, Wuxia shouted at the Buddhists and Taoists at the top of his voice. What are you waiting for? Do you think you can decide the ownership of Yuxiong army with your tongues? You have to talk with your fists and knives. Yuxiong army, which accounts for more than 40% of the total combat strength of all the armies in DU. Whoever gets Yuxiong army will have the chance to annex DU. What are you waiting for? Both men were enraged. Without saying a word, they unleashed their prime magical treasures and charged at each other. With the overall strength of the almighty experts from Buddhism and Taoism, although they saw Wuxia stirring up trouble, they did not have the time to argue with Wuxia. Wuxia did not believe that they could coexist peacefully and share the enormous military strength of Yuxiong army. Ying Zheng and the others exchanged a glance. Suddenly, Yin Dan laughed and said, "What you said is very kind. We the human race hate fighting and killing the most. It is the best if we can solve the problem of Yuxiong army in such a peaceful way. The strongest will win. Whoever is more powerful will take Yuxiong army and leave." Along with a series of tinkling noise, the cloak, which was condensed from Buddha light, cracked. The 3 flying swords drilled into the cloak through those cracks like a tangible mist, hacking fiercely on the golden body for 13 times and cutting off 1 head and 9 arms from the 3-headed, 24-armed Buddha. We are in a weaker position, so we can't be greedy. Let's limit to treasures equal to the value of the 3 supreme treasures of Primal and Dao League. Now that the Dao League has no men in their hands, they can only rely on the power of Great Wu to do things. This is a great opportunity to plant a nail in them. After shouting for a while, Wuxia slapped Nine-Tailed's head and flew backward. Spreading his hands, Wuxia cut off the spiritual connection with Reverend Shouzhua, then smiled at Taoist Ming-Ying and the World Venerables and said, "Since Holy Mother Empress Hua has spoken, it's settled. What do you think, 6 sacred emperors? Dao League and Buddhism League will fight each other here, today, right now. So what if we give Yuxiong army to whoever survives in the end?" While fighting desperately with Taoist Ming-Ying, the World Venerables ordered the Celestial Fiend from outer domains to attack the Dao League's immortals. Countless Celestial Fiend from outer domains and armies poured out of the Buddhist kingdom to form battle formations, attacking the Dao League's immortals with no regard for their own lives. He narrowed his eyes and smiled strangely. His smile made Taoist Ming-Ying and Yen Shi's faces twitch a few times. But the Dao League's immortals were not to be outdone. The Buddhist League had the armies of the Buddhist kingdom at their disposal, while the Dao League's immortals scattered beans into soldiers or threw out countless spirit talismans to transform into yellow-scarved strongmen, as well as various divine beings of the Dao League, to fight the armies of the Buddhist kingdom. This was especially true for those at the sect master level. The magic they cast was bean soldiers. The golden and silver beans were made of innate materials, and each of them had the power of a gold immortal or above. A blinding light flashed across the battlefield as an ancient Buddha and a primordial immortal fought fiercely, detonating their natal magical artifacts to perish together with each other. They were also the first pair of primordial immortals to fall today. It was a pity that countless eons of cultivation had gone down the drain. Heads flew in all directions as more than 3,000 Yuan Ling soared into the sky, and were swept away by the power of the investiture of the gods to the Daoyu Ocean Kingdom beyond the 33 heavens. Wuxia and his company were smiling happily as they watched the battlefield gradually move towards the territory of the Shizo dynasty. Apart from Gao, all the captains of the imperial clan in Yuxiong army must be returned to me, do you? Said Chu Ping coolly. You can do whatever you want with the rest of the soldiers. Another loud boom rang out. The scalps on all three heads of the world venerables exploded, and their heads were nearly blown to pieces. Taoist Minging howled miserably as well. Dozens of tiny slits appeared in his eyes, and his pair of purple divine eyes of heaven, which he had cultivated painstakingly for countless eons, was almost completely shattered. Although he was lucky enough to preserve a tiny bit of his energy, he knew that without a long period of hard work he would never be able to restore his eyes. As he spoke, a ring of Buddhist light emerged from the back of the world venerable's head and transformed into a bright beam of light, shooting towards Taoist Minging. Not to be outdone, Taoist Minging glared at Taoist Minging, and his eyes abruptly turned into a dense purple mist, emitting a large sheet of purple light and a sharp aura. Wuxia glared back and cried out rudely, "So what if it's me? I'm the one who sent the Yuan Ling of those almighty experts you killed into the transmigration. What do you want? Since Dao-fusing saints are not allowed to do it, do you think you can bite my bird?" Neither side was willing to give up, and neither was willing to be outdone. Both sides began to fight each other with all the means they had. Wuxia and the 6 Saint Emperors, as well as Gao and the others, stood on a distant mountain peak, smiling as they watched the almighty experts of Tao League and Buddhist League kill each other. Since things had come to this, Wuxia did not bother to hide his strength any longer. Raising the Book of Life and Death and the Soul Hooking Brush, he began to draw a few strokes at the over 3,000 Yuanling. Miserable howls and cries filled the air as a very powerful force of the 6 paths of reincarnation rushed out from the void, dragging Yuanling, who had more than 70% of the traders of Diyu, into the transmigration. The world paragon gave a muffled snort. With a sway of his body, he had regrown his 1 head and 9 arms in just a blink of an eye. Lotus flowers sprayed out of his mouth, which swayed in the wind and transformed into clumps of golden flame that shot towards Taoist Minging. Cracking noises kept ringing out. Taoist Minging did not have enough time to retract his 3 flying swords, and as soon as they touched the golden flame, they exploded into countless golden fireflies that scattered in all directions. The world venerable was slightly stunned. 6 of his arms pinched the Vajra seal at the same time, and a ball of golden Buddha light wrapped around his body. The Buddha light that was almost tangible formed a golden Buddha robe that looked like armor on his huge golden body. Right after the robe was formed, a crisp ringing rang out, as 3 flying swords that drifted erratically like mist darted out of the void and pierced the vital parts of the world paragon's body several thousand times in just a blink of an eye. Both the world paragon and Taoist Minging burst out laughing at the same time. What a joke! Do you really think we can be fooled by such a crude trick of sowing discord? Zheng said slowly, "You have a good idea, kid. It's just a mere Yuxiong army, so what if we give it to them? If we give Diyu 3 to 5 years, we can build an army that is a few times larger than Yuxiong army, and risk everything to consume the Panga sacred energy in the spirit cave under Yuxiong plain. But these immortals..." Hee. Even a heaven immortal has to cultivate for several thousand years, right? If a few gold immortals are killed or wounded, that would be equivalent to a few periods of hard work. As soon as Taoist Minging and the world paragon struck, all the immortals from Tao League and Buddhist League had found their opponents who were about as strong as them, and had exercised all kinds of divine abilities and magical spells to fight each other. The members of Tao League and Buddhist League, who could appear in such an occasion, were not some rookies in the world of cultivation. They were all old monsters and experienced almighty experts. Every time they struck, they would strike with a deadly strike, and they would not stop until one of them was dead. The eyes of the 6 Saint Emperors gleamed with an eerie purple gleam as they glanced at the generals of the imperial clan, who had a strange expression on their faces. Suddenly, Zheng gave a cold laugh, pulled out the sword of Emperor Qin, and thrust it at the generals. A piercingly cold sword energy whistled out. Over 3,000 generals of the imperial clan, who had faint ripples of Buddhist and immortal energy emanating from their bodies, were powerless to resist, and were killed by Ying Zheng with just one strike. In just a short exchange, both Taoist Ming Ying and the World Paragon had struck a deadly blow at each other. That's it. We'll slowly squeeze them dry. But don't go too far, lest they get angry and fight each other out of humiliation. Now both sides are holding back for fear of hurting each other. Both want Great Wu's national power and military power, and are afraid that the other will strike. That's why they are bidding to buy Great Wu over. The World Paragon and Taoist Ming Ying, who had the highest status on the scene, were rocking back and forth with laughter. But their laughter only lasted for less than the time of a breath. Suddenly, the World Paragon's body swayed, and in the blink of an eye, he had transformed into an 80 feet tall golden-colored avatar. Wielding the Vajra pestle, the Lotus Sword, the Flaming Sword, the Muni Pearl, the Lotus, the Alms Bowl, the Bell, the Conch, and many other magical artifacts of the Buddhist League, he threw them at Taoist Ming Ying without saying a word. A muffled boom rang out as Taoist Ming Ying's body exploded into a clump of white mist. When he was laughing out loud, Taoist Ming Ying had exercised the art of Qimen Dunjia and fled. What he left behind was just a fake shadow which he created with an immortal spell. Since Wu Qi's proposal had been approved by the Wahuang clan just now, the matter was settled. Apart from not hurting Jiao, the Yuxiong army was the bait thrown out by the Wahuang clan, while the Tao League and the Buddhist League were two greedy sharks. For this bait, they were bound to fight to the death. Tianwen clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Gold immortals are one thing, but look at those Buddhas and primordial immortals who perished together. TSK, what a waste of effort." Not allowing Taoist Ming Ying and the World Paragon to speak, Wu Qi whistled sharply. The 6 saint emperors laughed in unison, and the army of the human race began to march back the way they came. Sitting on Ninetail's back, Wu Qi was at the rear of the army, putting on a posture of bringing up the rear to stop the pursuers. In just a few breaths of time, thousands of Tao League and Buddhist League immortals had fallen. One after another, their Yuan Ling soared into the sky and flew back to the Daoyu Ocean army. But in the distance, Wu Qi raised the soul hooking brush and drew a few strokes, throwing over 60% of Yuan Ling into the 6 paths of reincarnation. Taoist Ming Ying, whose 3 flying swords were destroyed, and a trickle of purple golden blood was seen trickling down the corner of his mouth, said with a cold grin, "Same to you, bald donkey. Aren't you the same as me? Whoever can get the Yuxiong army will be able to attack Dayu and control the destiny of the human race. Hee, Tao League and Buddhist League have long fallen out with each other. So what if we have a real war?" Chapter 1057. Above the sky outside Mianhu City, the Buddhists and the Taoists were locked in a fierce battle. The army of Buddhists with weaker cultivation bases fought fiercely with the soldiers summoned by the immortals. From time to time, some Buddhists would have their limbs chopped off, transforming into beams of light, and returning to their respective Buddhist lands. Once the soldiers summoned by the immortals were wounded, they would turn into crystalline beings of different materials and fall to the ground. There were also a large number of yellow scarf warriors mixed among the Tao League soldiers. Once these tall and strong spirit creatures were killed, they would explode like a bomb, with a power strong enough to flatten everything within a radius of a few miles. The Tao League soldiers were made of beans, and they had no concept of life and death. When the yellow scarf warriors exploded, they would even pull the nearby Buddhist soldiers and rush toward the exploding yellow scarf warriors. Because of this, the Buddhist soldiers suffered a great number of casualties, and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who were fighting had to pay attention to them. After all, these soldiers were fanatics in their Buddhist kingdoms, who provided them with an enormous power of faith, which was the source of their power. It was especially so for these armed fanatics. Their souls were very strong, and the power of faith they provided was 10 times, even 100 times, or even 1,000 times greater than that of other believers. Losing even one of them was a heartache. But in a battle between experts, any distraction could be fatal. These Buddhas and Bodhisattvas could not bear to see so many of their Buddhist kingdom soldiers die. So when they were slightly distracted, the Tao League immortals who were fighting with them would immediately unleash their best magical treasures, and give them a fatal blow. In just a few breaths of time, hundreds of Bodhisattvas had fallen, and tens of Buddhas had their golden bodies broken, crying out in pain. The world paragon who was fighting desperately with Taoist Minging let out a furious roar and shouted, reminding those Buddhists to keep their spirits up. The army of celestial fiends from outer domains, who had lined up in battle formations, surged forward and fought together with the Buddhist soldiers. The battle cries shook the sky, and billowing clouds blotted out the sun. Within tens of thousands of miles around Mianhu City, not a single ray of sunlight could be seen. Only various auspicious lights and strange lights. At the lowest level were the Buddhist soldiers, Tao soldiers and yellow scarf warriors, while at the top were the Buddhist bodhisattvas and Tao League's gold immortals. Today, both sides had shed all pretense of cordiality. Be it bodhisattvas or golden immortals, they had unleashed their strongest magical treasures and most powerful spells. From time to time, shattered figures would fall down from the void. Bodhisattvas or golden immortals had spent several eons to cultivate, but today, all their efforts were in vain. Above these bodhisattvas and gold immortals, Yin revered and Taoist Minging were engaged in a fierce battle. Around them, dozens of ancient Buddhas and Buddhas were fighting a similar number of primordial immortals. The Tao League's primordial immortals had a definite advantage in terms of numbers. At the moment, there were 4 to 5 primordial immortals who had no opponents, wandering around the perimeter of the battlefield. From time to time, they would launch a sword beam or strike out a magical treasure to launch a sneak attack on their enemies. Because of the existence of these few idle primordial immortals, the Buddhas of the Buddhist League had suffered some losses. Some of their golden bodies were badly damaged, their heads were chopped off, and a few of their arms were chopped off. There were huge cracks on their golden bodies, from which golden blood gushed out like a fountain. Because of these few idle primordial immortals, the Buddha's bodhisattvas suffered some losses. Some of their golden bodies were badly damaged, their heads were chopped off, and a few of their arms were chopped off. There were huge cracks on their golden bodies, from which golden blood gushed out like a fountain. As he watched, Taoist Minging moved his golden body rapidly, and kept attacking Taoist Minging. But Taoist Minging gradually retreated westward along with the momentum of his attack. As the battle moved further away from Mianhu City, the immortals from Tao League and Buddhism League flew westward, leaving behind a few bodhisattvas and gold immortals to keep an eye on Wuxia's army. When the battle was far away from Mianhu City, the attacks of those immortals suddenly became heavier. Wherever they passed, mountains crumbled, lakes dried up, forests and grasslands burst into flames, and fertile lands suddenly turned into deserts. On the border between the Yu dynasty and the Shizo dynasty, 3 military towns of the Shizo dynasty stood in a triangular formation. They were the military towns used by the Shizo dynasty to fight against Mianhu City. Millions of soldiers were stationed in the towns, as well as the laborers who provided the supplies for these soldiers. As the battle between the Buddhas and Taoists passed by the 3 military towns, a gap suddenly appeared in Taoist Mingying's impenetrable defensive circle. Ignoring the flaming sword that Paragon's bodhisattvas were hacking at his face, he spun and produced a 5-colored stone, smashing it down towards the head of a Buddha. The Buddha was locked in a stalemate with a primordial immortal, using a mystic art. He had sealed off the void with both hands, and was about to draw the primordial immortal into his Buddhist kingdom to trap and kill him. All of a sudden, Taoist Menging smashed the stone down. The Buddha howled miserably as the upper half of his golden body was smashed into pieces. Then a Yuanling shot up into the sky with 3 fist-sized golden relics, fleeing in a sorry state towards Mount Gridrakuta. The Paragon's bodhisattvas flew into a rage, and increased the strength of their flaming swords. A ripping noise rang out as Taoist Mengying's sleeve was sliced open by the sword, and a palm-sized purple talisman drifted down gently. As soon as the talisman flew out, it transformed into a hair-thin lightning bolt and plunged down to the ground. By the time the tiny lightning bolt touched the ground, it had already expanded to 3,000 miles in circumference, enveloping the 3 military towns down below. A loud rumble rang out. Wuxia and the 6 Saint Emperors, who were watching the battle from afar, felt the mountains under their feet shake violently. When the blinding lightning bolt faded away, the 3 military towns, as well as the nearby cities and villages, had disappeared without a trace. All that was left was a huge pit with a diameter of 3,000 miles and a depth of several tens of thousands of miles. It was because Pangu continent was extremely tough that it could withstand such an attack. If it were any other planet in the outer heavenly realms, it would have long been shattered by the lightning bolt. Millions of elite soldiers of Shizo dynasty were turned into ashes in an instant, and the Paragon's bodhisattvas were so angry that they coughed up a mouthful of blood. Trembling, he cursed aloud. Menging, you filthy Taoist! You have committed a sin. How could you use an immortal art to deal with these ordinary soldiers? Aren't you afraid of the wrath of the heaven? Taoist Menging smiled faintly and said, Baldy, don't get it wrong. The talisman is in my sleeve. It is a treasure given to me by Daozu to save my life. You cut my sleeve, and that's why this disaster happened. In the final analysis, you are the one who caused all this. If we are talking about the wrath of the heaven, it should be you. What does it have to do with me? The Paragon's bodhisattvas were driven mad with rage. Like a mad tiger, he spat out a golden lotus flower from his mouth, sending countless balls of Buddhist flame towards Taoist Menging. Taoist Menging had just seen 3 immortal swords destroyed, so he naturally knew the power of the golden lotus flame. Carefully, he dealt with the Paragon's bodhisattva's attack, while retreating westward step by step. At the same time, from time to time, Taoist Menging would give out a few shouts, and those Tao League immortals who were fighting with the holy saints of the Buddhist League would step into beams of light and fly away in all directions. The holy saints of the Buddhist League who were fighting with them had no choice but to follow them. The Paragon's bodhisattva's expression changed abruptly. He roared furiously and slapped the back of his head. A beam of white light flew out from the top of his head, within which 42 white relics, each the size of a rice bucket, rose into the sky while emitting a vast and bright light. The relics swayed in the wind and abruptly transformed into 42 golden bodies of Buddhas, each standing 60 feet tall with 3 heads and 6 arms, charging towards the Tao League immortals who were flying away in all directions. Wuxia glanced at the 42 Buddhas with his divine will. Surprisingly, all of them possessed the overall strength of Tao-breaking realm. Wuxia could not help but throw his head back and sigh. This was the foundation of Buddhist League. The strength of Buddhist League did not lie in the number of Buddhas or revered bodhisattvas they had, but in the fact that these Buddhas and revered bodhisattvas lived in seclusion in Vulture Mountain, and were not affected by the apocalypses of heaven and earth. They had been cultivating in seclusion for countless years, and had an enormous and nearly endless magic power for them to squander. A Paragon's bodhisattvas had formed 42 natal relics, and the magic power contained in each of them was equal to that of an almighty expert of Tao-breaking realm. There is no justice in this world. Wuxia murmured to himself. Yingzheng nodded slowly and said, Therefore we must let them understand what is the real reason of heaven. Wuxia did not say a word. He just stared at the holy saints of Buddhist League and Tao League, who were gradually dispersing in the distance. The holy saints of Buddhist League were flying in all directions in a disorderly manner. They had purposely chosen to fight with the holy saints of Buddhist League in the air above the densely populated cities of the Shizo dynasty. The army of the Shizo dynasty was either stationed at the border of Diyu, or in the former territory of the Shizo dynasty, or just guarding some important checkpoints and military towns. The cities in their territory were really defenseless. With the overall strength of these gold immortals, and even primordial immortals, a casual shockwave from their battle could easily wipe out a city with a population of millions. As the saying goes, when the immortals fight, the mortals suffer. Wuxia and the others spread their divine will, and enveloped the entire territory of the Shizo dynasty. They saw smoke and dust billowing in the Shizo dynasty, and a vast amount of resentment towering into the sky. In just 2 hours, thousands of cities had been destroyed. Countless people in the cities died tragically, and countless souls flew up into the sky and were sucked into the 6 paths of reincarnation. The poor people of the Shizo dynasty were still chanting Buddhist scriptures and praying for the protection of the Buddha before they died. How could they know that the ones who brought disaster to them were the Buddhas and bodhisattvas, whom they revered as deities? The battle between the two sides grew fiercer. Some Buddhas and primordial immortals fought with all their might, And they even began to use some terrible means to destroy the laws of the heavenly Tao. Wherever these almighty experts passed, the void turned into chaos, and everything on the ground was razed to the ground. With just a casual strike, not even a bacterium was left within a radius of 10,000 miles. Mountains crumbled, the sky fell, and the earth cracked. It was as if the world was about to be destroyed. Wuxia watched attentively. He saw a primordial immortal of Tao League unleash his killing intent, and a golden sword beam suddenly shot out of his eyes and swept across the void. The laws of 5 elements in the sword beam disintegrated. The flame was cold, the earth energy was light, the water vapor was heavy, the golden light was blunt, and the wood energy was dry. The disintegrated 5 elements fused into one, transforming into an invincible power of destruction. The sword beam swept across 100,000 miles, wiping out more than 30 major cities of the Shizo dynasty along the way, and destroying the foundations of dozens of mountains that stood tens of thousands of miles tall. The mountains were pushed up into the sky by the sword beam, showing signs of breaking away from Pangu continent and flying into outer heavenly realms. Wuxia could not help but nod with emotion. He finally understood how Pangu continent was broken into countless outer heavenly realms. Chapter 1058. As soon as the dozens of mountains, tens of thousands of miles tall and stretching for tens of thousands of miles, flew up into the sky, the furious Buddha unleashed a divine ability that could reverse heaven and earth. The world in that part of the void changed, and the divisions of north, south, east, and west could no longer be distinguished. The dozens of mountains were burned into one by the golden flame of the Buddha, transforming into a palm-shaped mountain that came whistling down, glowing brightly as it smashed down toward the primordial immortal. With a sway of his body, the gold immortal abruptly turned into a cloud of green smoke and dissipated. The mountain, which contained the mighty power of the Buddhist League's 6-syllable mantra, brushed past the cloud of green smoke and smashed down. Ahead of it was a basin with a diameter of 10,000 miles. It was a land of abundance within the territory of the Shizo dynasty, a land rich in climate, natural products, and various resources. The huge mountain smashed onto the basin, turning thousands of cities, villages, and towns into nothingness amidst the towering flames. Billions of people turned into drifting souls and flew up into the sky before they could figure out what had happened. The sinful Buddha and primordial immortal could not care less about the lives and deaths of these people. Ignoring the great destruction caused by the mountain, they focused on attacking each other. They flew through the smoke and dust of the basin's destruction, fighting all the way as they flew into the distance. Wherever they passed, everything was razed to the ground, and countless people were torn to pieces amidst their wails, and their families were destroyed. Sitting on the back of 9 tails, Wuxia watched coldly as the people of the Shizo dynasty struggled and wailed amidst the raging flames. After a long time, when about 10 billion people of the Shizo dynasty had been killed by the battle between the immortals, Wuxia turned to the 6 sacred emperors and asked, "They are all people of the human race. Aren't you going to do anything about their death?" Ingzheng and Wei Wuji just grinned grimly, crossed their arms over their chests, and exuded an indescribably mighty aura that no one could look directly at. Chu Ping, who had the best temper, sighed and said, "Although they are people of the human race, they come from outer realms. They have forgotten the foundation of the human race. What they believe in are the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Buddhist League, and what they dream of is the longevity and divine abilities of the Tao League. I don't want such human beings." Yen Dan clasped his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "The Shizo dynasty is destined to fall. Rather than letting these people stir up trouble within you after the Shizo dynasty is destroyed, it's better to let them die today. It's best if they all die so that we don't have to waste our energy." He narrowed his eyes and sneered, then said cruelly, "If they don't die today, when the Shizo dynasty is completely wiped out, they will be killed by us. Let them personally experience the true nature of the holy immortals and Buddhas that they believe in. After they reincarnate, they will also be good humans." Chu Ping laughed lightly, then turned to Wuxia and said, "Let them die. After they are reincarnated, they will still be humans on Pangu continent, and they will naturally learn the traditions of the human race. Even if their bones and flesh are turned into ashes, they will still be returned to Pangu continent, and it will not cause any loss to the human race. As long as their souls are intact, it doesn't matter if they die. Wuxia nodded slowly. This was the attitude of the real higher-ups of the human race towards those who came from outer heavenly realms. As long as their souls were intact and they were reincarnated in Diyu, they would be taught all kinds of traditions by the indigenous humans of Diyu. When the 6 paths of reincarnation had washed away their memories of this life, they would truly be recognized as humans by the higher-ups of the human race. With a sigh, Wuxia took out a bottle of life-saving spirit pills and threw it to Gao. After nodding to Gao, Wuxia patted Ninetails on the head, cupped his fist at the 6 Saint Emperors, and then transformed into a beam of flame and shot into the sky together with Ninetails, plunging into the battle between the Buddhist League and the Tao League in a flash. Tianwen asked in surprise, "What is this boy doing?" Ingzheng twitched his mouth and sneered. "What else can he do? He's just looting a burning house." Tiske. After a moment of pondering, Ingzheng shook his head and said, "It's a pity that Her Majesty has spoken. Otherwise, we could have taken this opportunity to reorganize Yuxiong army in Mianhu City. It's a pity that we can't refute Her Majesty's decree." The 6 Saint Emperors fell silent, while Gao, who was standing off to the side, stared blankly at the bottle of pills Wuxia had thrown to him. Suddenly, he walked up to the 6 Saint Emperors, dropped to his knees and kowtowed repeatedly. His forehead banged against the ground as he howled hoarsely, "Saint Emperors, please redress my grievances. My children, 4 biological children and 1 adopted son, have all been killed by them." After howling for a while, Gao's vocal cords were torn, and drops of blood were oozing out of the corners of his mouth. The corners of his eyes were torn, and 2 streams of bloody tears rolled down his cheeks, forming a small pool of blood on the ground. Yen Dan's face twitched as he said in a hoarse voice, "This matter. Hee. Tao League and Buddhist League have treated the human race like nothing by doing this. They have completely destroyed the tradition of having children. From now on, the father will not be the father, the son will not be the son, and the moral code will always be broken. They are destroying the foundation of the human race. They are destroying the foundation of the human race," said Chu Ping coolly. "Otherwise, when the human emperor they have cultivated replaces Diyu, how are they going to control the vast human race? Haven't they been practicing in the mortal world for countless years just for this?" With a flip of his palm, a submerged thunder appeared in his palm. "If they are heartless, we will be unjust," he said coolly. "Although the relationship between Tao League and Buddhist League is broken now, and we are no longer allies, we are still a little bit away from falling out." Wei Wuji grinned hideously and said, "Then let's be heartless and unjust." The 6 Saint Emperors clasped their palms together, and the submerged thunder flashed a faint gleam in their palms before vanishing without a trace. Their movements were so obscure, and the mystic arts they used were so mysterious that even Wuxia, who was hovering in midair, could only sense something as if some ominous wind was blowing past him. But he could not figure out what was going on. Thousands of miles away from Taoist Ming Ying, a gold immortal from Tao League, who was fighting a Buddhist bodhisattva with a flying sword, was taken aback. His sleeve sank down, and an object about the size of a fist appeared out of thin air. The gold immortal's taut face became extremely relaxed, and a strange smile emerged on his face. "Finally, I can get rid of the identity of a gold immortal. I don't seek immortality, I just want to be free and happy in the mortal world. I really miss the few acres of mountainous land in Yuxiong Plain. It's a pity that the big yellow dog is no longer here now." A speck of golden light shot out from between his brows. Abruptly, the aura emanating from the peak-level gold immortal changed, and plumes of purple mist emerged from the golden light that wrapped around him. Gradually, the purple mist towered up into the sky, while thunderclouds began to gather in the sky. In just a blink of an eye, 36 thunderbolts struck down in a row, but they were all caught firmly by the immortal with a single hand. The bodhisattva, who was fighting with the immortal, was so frightened that he screamed and turned to flee. Then, he stepped into the realm of primordial smoothly from the peak of gold immortal. But before he could run far, The primordial immortal opened his mouth and breathed out a plume of purple mist, which transformed into a huge hand and grabbed the bodhisattva. He chuckled and murmured in a low voice, "Remember my name, the man who killed you, the woodcutter of Yuxiong Plain. Mao Duan. I am the woodcutter Mao Duan, not the gold immortal Mao Yinxian." After crushing the bodhisattva into a pile of meat paste, Mao Duan laughed aloud and said, "Don't panic, fellow Taoists. I, Mao Yin, am here to help you." With one flying sword, Mao Duan swung it around like a windmill and easily killed over 100 bodhisattvas. The difference between a peak-level gold immortal and a primordial immortal was like the difference between an ant on the ground and a divine dragon in the sky. Now that Mao Duan had broken through to the realm of primordial immortal, he now had the overall strength to dominate the battlefield. After a round of killing, Mao Duan killed all the Buddhists within an area of several thousand miles circumference. After that, he brought several hundred gold immortals and flew towards the place where Daoist Ming-Ying and the world paragons were fighting. Daoist Ming-Ying was bringing the world paragons closer to Kamheart City, the capital city of the Shizo dynasty, while the world paragons were desperately trying to stop him. What a joke! When two almighty experts of Tao-breaking realm fought in the sky above Kamheart City, the city would be left with nothing. The immortals and Buddhists from both sects were having a great time fighting each other, while Wuxia, who was taking advantage of the situation, was laughing out loud. Unlike those beggar immortals in outer heavenly realms who did not even have a single heaven immortal item in their sect, those who were sent to Mianhu City were all the core disciples of Tao League and Buddhist League, and were all rich men, whom Daozu and Buddha had spent a great deal of effort to arm and equip. As a result, they were very wealthy, so much so that any one of them had enough to support Patriarch Jiangyun's White Cloud Immortal sect for hundreds of thousands of years. Just now Wuxia had ordered Ninetails to sneak attack them from behind, knocking out 2 gold immortals and 2 bodhisattvas. From them he found 2 innate spirit items, over 30 supreme-grade gold immortal items, and countless spirit pills and life-saving talismans. And these were just 4 gold immortals. How many good things could those Buddhists and primordial immortals have? With a sneaky look in his eyes, Wuxia turned to look at the Buddhists and primordial immortals who were fighting fiercely in the sky, and a bright smile appeared on his face. Then he crooked his finger and summoned a gust of wind. Using an escape art to conceal himself and Ninetails, Wuxia transformed into a gust of wind and shot toward one of the Buddhists. Even Buddha Daozu could not discover Wuxia, who was using a mystic art from Scroll of Stealing, let alone these Buddhists and immortals present. Sneaking up behind the Buddha, Wuxia was about to give him a good smack on the back of his head when a violent shockwave suddenly came from the west. The shockwave shook Wuxia's body violently. Despite his strong fleshly body, he felt a sweet taste in his throat and coughed up a mouthful of blood. In shock, Jihao looked to the west and saw a crimson pillar of fire, with a diameter of 300,000 miles, rising into the sky from the direction of Clear Heart City. The hundreds of millions of miles tall pillar of fire rose into the sky, slowly expanding in the sky like an enormous mushroom. Streams of red shockwaves visible to the naked eyes spread out in all directions, and wherever they went, all gold immortals, bodhisattvas, primordial immortals, and Buddhists were turned to dust. A heart-wrenching howl rushed out of the core of the pillar of fire. "You filthy bastard! How dare you use such a despicable trick? The Buddhist League will never forgive you." Streams of panic-stricken divine sense spread out rapidly in the void, and Wuxia easily intercepted the information in them. Kamheart City had been destroyed, and all members of the Shizo dynasty, including Emperor Wugo, had perished. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.